What if Ron was sorted into Slytherin? The corridor is narrow and full of green fire. May 1998. Hogwarts dungeons. The battle has already reached the upper floors. Dust sifts from the ceiling in slow, uncertain drifts, each tremor from above sending a shiver through the old stone. Water drips somewhere behind the walls, a slow, patient rhythm under the distant echo of screams. Ron Weasley stands in Slytherin robes, silver trim, catching the sickly light, wand hand, shaking, but raised. The torches along the passage burn an unnatural emerald, flames stretched thin and high, fed by magic he does not want to think about. The air smells of damp rock, cold metal, and the sharp sting of something burnt that is not wood. Far down the corridor, from the direction of the chamber, a thin hiss of parcel-tongue rides the draught, too soft to understand, close enough to make the hairs on his arm stand up. He knows that voice. He has been planning this, in his own stumbling, stubborn way, for longer than he will admit. In front of him, a knot of students in mismatched robes huddle back toward a blocked stairwell. A Ravenclaw girl with a torn sleeve. Two tiny Hufflepuffs clutching each other. A Slytherin boy he recognizes from first year, eyes wide, tie askew, house badge half torn. They look at each other, then at him, as if waiting to see which way he will turn. Behind Ron, the Death Eaters fan out, masks gleaming pale in the green, wands ready. Robes whisper as they walk. One of them steps forward. Taller than Ron, shoulders broad under dark fabric, mask pushed up just enough to show a familiar curve of mouth. The voice is smooth, amused, and edged like a blade that has been sharpened on old grudges. "Move aside, Weasley, you've played at being one of us long enough. Blood traitor, coward. You always flinch at the last moment." The words land with the weight of 7 years in the same common room, the same long tables, the same whispered arguments by the fire. Ron's fingers tighten around his wand. He remembers first-year nights by the green-lit hearth, jokes that were not jokes, essays passed across the table with quiet corrections, threats wrapped in friendly advice. He remembers every time they called his family poor, every time they called Hermione worse. A moment of understanding passes between them, bitter and bright. They both know the ledger of old insults is full. When he answers, his voice is quiet, almost conversational. "You really think I stayed down here for the decor?" He looks straight into the man's eyes, past the half-mask, past the old house tie. "You think I don't know whose vaults pay for your little masks? Which Gringotts keys you can't afford to lose? Which families sent their sons to play both sides?" The words are not Gryffindor bravado. They are inventory, leverage, the kind of knowledge that only a Slytherin who listened could collect. He takes a step forward, then another. The green and silver tie at his throat is spattered with dust and blood. The crest darkened, almost unrecognizable. For a heartbeat, he looks like he belongs to no house at all, only to this choice. He has been planning this, not with elegant schemes, but with every small refusal, every secret note, every night. He did not laugh at the right joke. The world above shakes again. The hiss in the depths sharpens. Ron lifts his wand a fraction higher. "Last chance," he says, and no one yet knows which side of the dungeon he means. The dungeon falls away. Steam, iron, a whistle. Building somewhere out of sight. August 1991, King's Cross Station. Early morning light pushes through dirty glass, turning the drifting dust into something almost magical. The crowds are only just beginning to thicken, a slow tide of suitcases and briefcases and half-finished coffees. Somewhere, a cleaner swears softly as a trolley wheel jams in a crack. Ron Weasley stands in the middle of it all like he has been dropped there by mistake. His jumper is too long in the sleeves, cuffs swallowing his hands. The maroon wool has been washed so many times it has lost the battle with gravity, dragging at his shoulders. His trunk is scuffed, one brass corner bent where it fell off the second-hand trolley. On top of it a wire cage with a sleepy grey rat and a door that does not quite shut unless you jiggle it. He looks at his family. He looks at the space just beyond them, where the barrier should be. He knows everything about being last in line and nothing about how to go first. His inventory is small and damning. Patched school robes folded tight so the worst of the mending does not show at once. A wand that is not quite straight. The wood bearing faint teeth, marks from some older brother's nervous habit. Sandwiches wrapped in reused parchment, the ink of an old ministry letter ghosting through the grease stains, a pair of shoes polished within an inch of their life, unable to hide the crack in the left sole. He has been planning this in his own way, counting down days on the back of a Chudley Cannon's poster, tracing the Hogwarts crest on his letter until the parchment went soft. Not like Bill, who walked out of the burrow with Cursebreaker confidence and Gringotts contracts in his pocket. Not like Charlie, whose dragon burns were stories before they were scars. Bill's old trunk has foreign stickers half peeled from its sides. A passing witch looks at it, then at Ron, and her smile is for the memory of the eldest, not the boy in front of her. Percy clutches his shiny new prefect badge, already rehearsing his walk, his voice the way adults nod approvingly when he quotes rules. Fred and George wheel a trunk that rattles ominously, a professor in plain clothes narrowing his eyes as if he can sense every future detonation. Ron watches all of it with a mix of love and something sour he does not name. Pride, yes. Resentment, quietly folded and put away like another hand-me-down. In this world, he is always someone's younger something. Bill's kid brother, one of the twins' potential victims, the spare Weasley. He looks at her. She looks at him. His mother's hands fuss at his collar, straighten his jumper, pat his cheek like he is still 8. A moment of understanding passes between them, thin and fragile. She is afraid he will be lonely. He is afraid he will be invisible. This is his chance. The thought comes with the slow inevitability of the trains themselves, heavy and unstoppable. At Hogwarts, they will not see Bill's curse breaking, or Charlie's dragons, or Percy's badge, or the twins' chaos when they look at him. They will see a name, a face, a boy with a bent wand and patched robes who might, if the world is not completely unfair, be something more than any description could contain. He squares his shoulders. The barrier waits. The story has not diverged yet, but Ron is already standing on the fault line. The platform is loud and bright and full of smoke. Ron feels all of it pressing against his skin like a too-tight jumper. He walks with his trolley trailing just behind his family. Trunk, owl cage, hand-me-down everything. His mother's voice is warm, his father's distracted, the twins already performing for the world. In every photograph at home, this is where he stands, a little to the side, a little out of focus, someone's elbow in front of his face, someone else's story taking up the space. He has been planning this, though he would never say it aloud, planning the moment Hogwarts will finally be his, not Bill's curse-breaking, or Charlie's dragons, or Percy's badge, or the twins' chaos. His. He knows every story by heart, because he has always been the listener, the boy on the floor, while the older brothers talk above his head, the one who laughs at the right places and then goes quiet when the room forgets he is there. At night, the quiet changes him. He lies in his narrow bed, springs digging through the mattress, and runs Quidditch scores through his head like prayer. Dates, teams, impossible saves. He can list World Cup lineups in order. He practices commentary under his breath, imagining a stadium roaring when he says the winning chaser's name. Sometimes it is his own name. Sometimes it is not. He rehearses clever lines for strangers he has not met yet, for professors who will surely be impressed, for friends who will look at him the way everyone used to look at his brothers. He looks at the barrier and feels a cold thought slide in under the excitement. If he does not stand out here at Hogwarts, when will he? There will not be another first year. There will not be another first impression. The fear is simple and sharp. If the world does not see him now, it never will. Hogwarts becomes, in his mind, not just a school, but a last, best chance to step out of a shadow that seems to stretch across his whole life. He loves them, though. That is the problem. He loves the way his mother's hands move when she knits, the way his father lights up over a plug, the way the twins make the kitchen feel like a festival. His loyalty is bone deep, fierce, unshakable, but underneath it, something simmers. The peeling paint at the Burrow, the second-hand books, the way people at the bank in Diagon Alley glance at his robes and then away, as if poverty is impolite to notice. The wider wizarding world does not care that Arthur Weasley works late or that Molly stretches every galleon. It cares about old names, old vaults, old magic. Ron watches it, even now, the way some families walk, the way shopkeepers straighten when a famous witch enters. He knows, without anyone saying it, that there is a ladder here, and that his family is not near the top. So what happens if, in that moment under the sorting hat, the voice in his ear does not speak of evil or darkness, only of power and recognition? What happens if it whispers of a house where ambition is not something to be ashamed of, where cleverness and hunger are tools, not flaws? A place where a boy who has always been the extra Weasley might finally be the first of something instead of the last of many? He sits on the stool. The hat drops, and the world narrows to a single private conversation. It asks him what he wants, not who he loves. What he wants. They look at each other, boy and voice, fear and desire. A moment of understanding passes between them, quiet and dangerous. The hat does not have to say the word Slytherin for Ron to feel how close he is to choosing the path that will make the world, at last, look back. Steam, thick and low, curls around his ankles. The platform is open and full of whistles. A moment later, September 1st, King's Cross. The dash toward the barrier is its own small battle. Mrs. Weasley counts heads, trunks, tickets. Fred and George vanish through the wall with a practiced sprint. Percy follows with prefect stiffness. Ginny bounces on her toes, begging again to come. Mr. Weasley lugs a battered trunk and an even more battered owl cage. They walk together, but the family moves like several currents in one river, crossing and knotting and separating. Ron hangs back. He has been planning this, in his own quiet way, for weeks. Not with maps or letters or careful notes like Hermione, not with secret Gringotts visits like Harry will one day make, but in the restless way he's packed and repacked his trunk, counted his sickles, imagined how the world might finally look at him and know his name. Now, as they near the barrier, he lets the others surge ahead, pretending to fuss with the handle of his trolley. Mrs. Weasley kisses his forehead in a distracted blur, then pushes him gently toward the wall. Straight at it, that's right. Don't stop and don't be scared. He is scared, a little. He walks anyway. Brick becomes smoke, Smoke becomes iron and steam, and the sudden roar of voices. Owls shriek from cages, cats yowl, trunks slam, the scarlet engine looms. The world is suddenly, impossibly, magical and crowded, and more than any description could contain. Ron drifts to the side, trolley wedged near a pillar. He listens more than he talks. It is easier that way, easier to let other people's stories fill the air, while his own stays small and quiet. Two older boys stand a few feet away, green and silver ties loose around their necks, prefect badges catching the light. Slytherins. One has slick dark hair and the relaxed posture of someone who knows he belongs. The other is sharper, eyes darting, fingers worrying the edge of a book. "I'm telling you," the relaxed one says, voice low but carrying, "Gryffindors do all the heroic charging about, but they never hold the quill when the laws get written. My father says every serious ministry reform in the last 50 years had a Slytherin behind it." The sharper boy snorts. "Your father also says half our house turned out dark. You forget that bit." A shrug. Power attracts rot. Doesn't mean the tree is bad. It just means the fruit matters. He leans closer, conspiratorial. "Gryffindors are brave, sure, but Slytherins are the ones who actually change things." The line lands like a thrown stone. Ron scoffs under his breath, a reflex shaped by a lifetime of hand-me-down stories. Gryffindor is where his family goes, where his brothers shine, where he is supposed to be brave and good and loud in all the ways he has never quite managed. But the words lodge anyway, actually change things. He imagines just for a heartbeat a different sorting, a hall gone silent, a table of green and silver turning to look. He imagines not being the sixth Weasley boy in red and gold, but the first Weasley in generations to walk a different path, to make the world say his name with surprise instead of assumption. He tells himself it's stupid. He tells himself he doesn't care. He tells himself he will be in Gryffindor and that will be that. The train whistle screams, people surge, trunks scrape. Ginny sniffles into their mother's robes. Ron hauls his own trunk toward an open door. The second-hand robes inside are folded with Mrs. Weasley's careful hands, smelling faintly of soap and old wood. As he reaches in, his fingers brush the lining of one sleeve, where the fabric has been replaced. Green. Not bright, not proud, just a muted strip of thrift store cloth. His hand lingers there, a second too long. Then he lets go, grabs plain black, and climbs aboard. The carriage is a narrow tunnel of noise and steam and footsteps. Then the door slides shut, and for a moment there is only rain. Ron sits alone, trunk shoved awkwardly under the seat, scabbers curled in a ball on his lap. The window is fogged at the edges where the outside world presses in, grey sky, blurred platforms, the last flickers of steam vanishing into the rafters. He has been planning this in the only way he knows how. Half-formed jokes, scraps of bravado, lines he might say if anyone asks about his brothers. He clears his throat, whispers to the empty compartment, "Yeah, my whole family's mental, but I'm the normal one." It sounds wrong in the stale air. He tries again. "You should see my brother's dragon burns." Better. Almost funny. He imagines someone laughing. He imagines not being the one laughing last and loudest, just to fill silence. The door opens. A boy stands there, thin as a broomstick, clutching a bag that looks too light to hold a life. His glasses are taped at the bridge. His clothes hang off him, sleeves swallowing his hands. Ron's eyes take all that in before they even think to look for a scar. Sorry, everywhere else seems full. Can I sit here?" the boy asks. Ron shrugs, suddenly aware of how patched his own robes are. "Yeah, course." The boy steps in, careful, like he's afraid of leaving marks. He sets his bag down with a softness that makes Ron think of breakable things. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. Not words, just the quiet recognition of boys who have never quite fit. Ron talks first because silence feels heavier than fear. Names, families, the word muggle hanging between them as Harry explains about the cupboard and Dudley and the letters that would not stop coming. Ron listens, then snorts at the description of Dudley's diet, then laughs, then can't quite stop. Harry's smile starts small, like it has to remember how, then grows. Ron's chest warms at that. He didn't know making someone else happy could feel like this. The trolley comes. Harry buys everything. Not like a show-off, more like someone testing whether the world will really let him. Ron hesitates, then admits he has sandwiches from home. Thick bread. Too much mustard. He unwraps one, then another, and Harry trades a chocolate frog for half, without even thinking about it. It is a small thing. Food passed back and forth, but it is more than any description could contain. A boy who has never had enough, and a boy who has never felt like enough, splitting pumpkin pasties and stories. Ron explains Quidditch, hands drawing shapes in the air, voice quickening as Harry leans forward. Positions, fouls, the way the crowd looks when a chaser dives. For once, he is the expert. He knows everything here, the rules, the teams, the way his brothers talk about the cannons as if hope is a habit. Harry listens like it's all precious. He asks about houses. Ron lists them, stumbling a little over Ravenclaw, grinning when he reaches Gryffindor. Then his mouth twists. And Slytherin, that's the house you don't want to be in. He says it lightly, like he's repeating something everyone knows. The words hang there anyway. Harry frowns. Why? Ron looks past him, out at the rain streaking the window, old stories, dark wizards, his father's tired voice after late ministry shifts. He could say all that. Instead he shrugs, eyes following one crooked trail of water. Just bad lot, mostly. He doesn't see his own reflection in the glass, thoughtful and shadowed. The camera does. It lingers there on a boy who jokes about a house he does not yet fear, in a world that has already decided what Slytherin means. Outside, the countryside begins to blur green and gold. Inside, two boys sit shoulder to shoulder, sharing sweets and stories, not knowing that in a few hours a hat will try to pull them apart. Harry looks at him. He looks at Harry. For this brief stretch of track, there is no war, no prophecy, no house lines. Just a train, the rain, and the boy who laughed first. The hall is a sky full of candles, wax and starlight hanging over 1,000 faces. The ceiling looks like the world outside, dark and endless, as if the train never stopped at all. Ron stands in the line of first years and feels his stomach twist. He can hear his own name, not yet called, ticking closer with every student. Abbott, Bones, Brown. Each step is a little closer to judgment. He swallows, fingers cold and sticky around his wand, and keeps his eyes away from the staff table. He knows Dumbledore is up there. He knows everything is supposed to be wonderful now. It does not feel wonderful. He risks a look sideways instead. The Slytherin table glitters with silver and green. Older students lean together, whispering. A pale boy with slicked-back hair looks at the first years like they are inventory. Crabbe and Goyle beside him. Ron remembers the way Harry went stiff on the train when that boy spoke about houses and blood. He remembers the sneer. It sits in Ron's mind like a stain. Hermione Granger is called. The bushy-haired girl from the train walks quickly, almost marching, as if she has been planning this since she read her first magical book. The hat barely touches her head before shouting, "Gryffindor!" She beams, looks back once, searching. Not for him, for Harry. Neville stumbles up, nearly drops the hat. "Gryffindor!" again. The table erupts. Ron claps because that is what you do, and because it buys him a second before the list moves on. "Potter! Harry!" The hall inhales. Ron watches his friend walk to the stool like he's walking into battle. The hat drops over Harry's eyes. The silence stretches. Ron's throat goes dry. He does not know that under the brim another voice is weighing Slytherin and Gryffindor, ambition and fear. He only knows that when the hat finally roars, "Gryffindor," his chest loosens. Of course. Harry looks at him. He looks at Harry. A moment of understanding passes between them. They made it. Then, "Weasley, Ronald!" The name cracks through the hall. Heat rushes to his face. He walks forward on legs that do not quite feel like his. He can feel eyes counting his hair, his second-hand robes, slotting him into a story already written. One more Weasley, red and gold. The hat comes down. The hall vanishes. Ah! The voice is not loud. It curls through his thoughts like smoke. Another Weasley. Ron's fingers clench on the stool. "Gryffindor," he thinks, hard and fast. "Please, Gryffindor." "You ask so quickly," the hat murmurs. "Do you even know what you are asking for?" Pictures rise without his consent. Bill, cool and confident in dragon-hide boots. Charlie, laughing on a broom. Percy, with his shiny badge. Fred and George turning every corridor into a story people will tell for years. Ginny, still at home, but already burning bright in every letter. And Ron. Hand me down everything. The last chess piece on the board. The voice is intimate, unsettling. You fear being nothing. You hunger to be seen. That is not a Gryffindor fear alone. It sifts through him. He feels it notice the way he watched every adult on the platform, gauging danger and advantage without meaning to. The way he counted prices in Diagon Alley turned sickles into strategies. Ambition, the hat says softly, born of scarcity. Cunning enough to hide it, adaptable enough to survive in any room. Ron flinches. "I'm brave," he insists. "I'd go after trolls, stand up to spiders, anything." "I see your bravery," the hat agrees. But bravery is a tool, not a destination. Slytherin could make use of that. You could carve your own place instead of standing in 6 shadows. No. His heart is pounding now. Not with them. Not with Malfoy. Gryffindor. Please. "Are you sure you want to be one more Weasley in red and gold?" the hat asks, almost gentle. "Are you sure you want a life where they look at you and only see your brothers?" Ron cannot answer, because the truth is complicated, more than any description could contain. The hat considers. He's been planning this, in its own way, since the moment the first Weasley sat under its brim, since it watched a pale boy on the train offer friendship and was refused. "You could change them," the hat whispers, "or they could change you." Outside the hat's brim, the hall waits. Harry's hands curl on the edge of the Gryffindor table. The pale boy at Slytherin leans forward, curious. The hat draws a breath Ron cannot feel. "Very well, Mr. Weasley," it says, and its choice will turn the whole school on its axis. It opens its mouth to shout. The hat's shout cracks the air. "Slytherin!" For a heartbeat, the great hall forgets how to breathe. No rustle of robes, no scrape of benches. Just the echo of that one word hanging under the enchanted ceiling, green and silver banners motionless in a wind that is not there. Then sound comes back in fragments, a dropped fork, a hissed "what?" From somewhere along the Gryffindor table, a first year at Hufflepuff starting to clap on reflex, then going scarlet as her hands fall still. Harry looks up so fast his neck twinges. He had been leaning forward, already half ready to welcome Ron beside him, already imagining the walk back to the tower with his first real friend. The word does not fit the boy with dirt on his nose who shared his sandwiches on the train. It feels like the hat has read the wrong letter, sorted the wrong life. At the staff table, McGonagall's teacup stops halfway to her mouth. At the clustered redheads of Gryffindor, Fred and George's usual grins are gone, replaced by open, unguarded shock. Percy's prefect badge glints as he stands a little, as if he might protest. Ginny, still too young to be sorted, sits with the other families and clutches Mrs. Weasley's sleeve so tightly the fabric bunches. The silence cracks. A slow, uncertain patter of applause rises from the Slytherin table, scattered at first, then solidifying as older students decide how this will look. Someone near the middle mutters, "Weasley," as if the name itself is an insult. Another voice, sharper, cuts through, "Blood traitor." The words are not shouted. They are worse for being almost conversational. Harry hears them. He does not yet know the history wrapped around that phrase, only that it makes his throat burn. He looks toward Hermione at the end of the Gryffindor bench. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them, wordless and fragile. This is not how today was meant to go. On the stool, the hat's brim lifts from Ron's head. The world narrows. The hall, the candles, the starry ceiling all smear into a long corridor of sound. He can feel hundreds of eyes on him, but his body moves before his mind catches up. He walks because there is nothing else to do. Green banners loom on his right, Slytherin serpents coiling and watching. Every step toward them feels like walking into someone else's story, one he has not been planning. One where he is not the sixth son in hand-me-down robes, but something sharper and more dangerous. He knows, dimly, that somewhere behind him, his brothers are staring. He does not turn. At the Slytherin table, Draco Malfoy's gaze is waiting, assessing, cool. There is a clear gap on the bench, an empty space left for him, as if the house has already made room, already begun to calculate uses and risks. It is a pattern interrupt in human form, pale pure-blood prince, and beside him, the poor Weasley, who should have been a lion. Ron reaches the space. His legs feel like they belong to someone else. He sits. The bench is solid under him. The murmur of Slytherin voices, a low, curious hiss at his back. He forces his mouth into a crooked grin, the same one he uses at home when a joke falls flat. It almost works. From across the hall, Harry can see the shape of it and wants, irrationally, to believe everything is fine. Under the tablecloth, hidden from every watching eye, Ron's hands are trembling. More than any description could contain, that is the truth of this moment. Stone and water pressed close around him. Ron follows the prefects down, past torches that burn green instead of gold. The air cools. The sounds of the feast thin out behind them until there is only the echo of footsteps and the faint, steady rush of the Black Lake overhead. When the wall finally swings back, the Slytherin common room opens like a cavern. Low stone arches, ribbed like the underside of some sleeping beast. Long shadowed walls hung with dark tapestries. Windows set into the rock itself, tall and narrow, looking straight into the greenish depths outside. Light filters through the water, warped and wavering, so that every face looks a little altered when it turns toward him. They are waiting. quiet clusters of students on leather sofas at low tables by the fire that burns a strange, slow emerald. First years, pale and wide-eyed. Older students relaxed in their own territory, watching the new arrivals with the easy confidence of people who know the rules. Ron feels every gaze like a weight on the second-hand robes Molly pressed flat that morning. Draco is the first to move. He peels away from a group near the fireplace, hands in his pockets, smirk already in place, as if he has been planning this walk across the room since the moment the hat shouted Slytherin. Weasley, he says, tasting the word. Interesting. Behind him, Pansy Parkinson lets out a soft, exaggerated sigh and rolls her eyes, taking in Ron's freckles, his height, the frayed edge of his sleeve. Her disdain is almost lazy, not worth my time. Off to the side, Blaise Zabini leans back in an armchair, dark eyes sharp. He doesn't speak. He just looks, cataloguing, as if Ron is an unexpected entry in a ledger at Gringotts. Not supposed to be here, but now that he is, he must mean something. A few older Slytherins glance up from a chessboard from a pile of parchment, and Ron can see the calculation there, cool and distant. A Weasley in their house, a traitor, an opportunity. Someone at the far end of a sofa slides over, making space. No eye contact, no smile, just a small, practical kindness. As Ron moves past, another voice, low and precise, threads the air just loud enough. Blood traitor, more like. A couple of students snicker. The word lands in his stomach like a stone. His mouth moves before his brain can stop it. Well, at least I match the decor, he mutters, tugging at his green and silver tie. Mum'll be thrilled. Saves on redecorating. A few first years give uncertain huffs of laughter. Even Draco's smirk twitches, amused in spite of himself. On the outside, Ron is all crooked grin and shrug, as if this is a joke he started. Inside, his stomach is churning. He pictures the kitchen at the Burrow, the clock hands, the chipped teapot, his mother's hands going still over the washing up, when the letter arrives. Ronald Bilious Weasley, Slytherin. Will they still want him? Like this? Will Fred and George laugh? Or will they look at him the way these older students do, measuring, waiting to see what he becomes? The prefect drones through passwords and curfew. Ron barely hears. He keeps thinking of Harry at the Gryffindor table, the way they look at each other across the hall, a moment of understanding passing between them before the houses split. Now, there is a lake and a castle and a house crest between them. Later, in the first-year boys' dormitory, the stone ceiling curves low overhead. 4 posters, dark wood, green hangings. His trunk at the foot of a bed that feels like someone else's. He lies on his back, curtains half drawn, listening. The black lake presses against the windows, a constant, muffled presence. Dull thuds. The distant scrape of something large against stone, a slow, liquid heartbeat in the walls. Each sound is a reminder. There is water between him and the sky, rock between him and the world he knows. He stares up into the dimness and counts his breaths. Thinks of his father's stories about Slytherin, thinks of Harry's face under the sorting hat, wonders which of them the castle has claimed more thoroughly tonight. Sleep does not come quickly. Down here, under the lake, he is further from his family than he has ever been. And in the quiet, with no one watching, he lets himself be afraid of what that distance might turn him into. The common room is blazing with light and noise. Gryffindor Tower, first night. Banners still hanging crooked from the welcoming feast, fire throwing gold against stone, older students shouting over one another as if they have been planning this celebration all summer. Harry sits on the edge of one of the big couches, a plate of half-eaten treacle tart in his lap, and feels oddly like a guest at someone else's party. Everyone is talking about him. About the boy who lived. About the hat's long pause, about how, of course, he was always meant for Gryffindor. No one is talking about the boy who walked away to the other table. Ron Weasly. Freckles, 2 big hands, a nervous joke on the train and a sandwich shared without comment. Harry keeps seeing the moment the stool scraped back, the flash of green and silver across the hall, the way Ron's shoulders had gone stiff when the table erupted in cheers that did not sound like his brother's laughter. A log cracks in the grate. He flinches. "Excuse me." The voice comes from just behind him, careful, as if approaching a wild creature. "You're Harry Potter." He turns. The girl from the train stands there, cardigan slightly askew, hair escaping its ponytail. Hermione Granger. She's holding a book and a folded piece of parchment the way other people hold a shield. She looks at him. He looks at her. "I am," he says. It still feels like a name that belongs to the newspapers more than to him. She hesitates, eyes flicking to the portrait hole, then back. "Your friend. The Weasley boy. He was sorted into Slytherin." It is not quite a question, not quite neutral either. Harry's fingers tighten around his plate. "Yeah, Ron." The name steadies him a little. I don't know what I thought. His whole family's Gryffindor. He has been planning this new life only in the vaguest shapes. Escape the cupboard, find the magical world, maybe have a friend who laughs with him at dinner. The plan had not included green banners or the way Hagrid's voice had dropped when he said Slytherin. There wasn't a single witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin. Does that mean he's... Harry breaks off. He does not quite dare to finish the sentence. Hermione's brow furrows. She sits down on the arm of the chair opposite, perching rather than relaxing, as if ready to stand and leave if she has misjudged this. "The books don't say it like that," she says slowly. "Hogwarts, a history, and the prefect's handbook. They describe Slytherin as ambitious, resourceful, determined. They talk about blood purity, yes, but also about strategy, influence. Influence can be bad," Harry says. Hagrid's warnings sit in his mind like stones. So can bravery, if you're reckless. Her tone is matter-of-fact, not scolding. Gryffindors charge in and get people hurt. Slytherins calculate and, sometimes, hurt people another way. But that's not the same as every single person being evil, is it? He studies her. No one has ever argued with him like this, not even really with him, more like with the idea hanging between them. Hagrid said, "Hagrid seems very kind." Hermione cuts in gently, "But he didn't finish school, did he? The hat sorted your friend, not Hagrid. The hat is supposed to know everything about us." The word everything lands between them with unexpected weight. Harry thinks of the hat's voice in his ear, the temptation it had dangled. Slytherin could help you on the way to greatness. He thinks of Ron's face when he talked about his brothers, about never being first at anything. Ambition, Harry repeats quietly. Maybe it saw something he wanted. Or something he could become. Hermione's gaze softens. "You liked him?" "Yeah." The answer is immediate. "He was normal. He didn't treat me like a story." They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. Hermione, who has read herself half sick on this world from letters and library books, and Harry, who has walked into it with nothing but a key to a Gringotts vault and a name that makes people stare. Around them, the party swells. Someone starts a song about Godric Gryffindor's sword. First years are being pulled into games. The fire pops again. Both of them, almost at the same time, glance toward the portrait hole. as if the fat lady might swing open and a tall, red-haired boy might stride through laughing, complaining about a mistake, about how, of course, he belongs here really. The portrait stays shut. Harry exhales. Hermione closes her book without realizing it. They do not say it aloud. But in the quiet space between words, something settles. An unspoken promise that the line drawn by the Sorting Hat is not the only line that matters. Under the lake, a boy in green wonders who he is now. Above it, by the fire, two new lions begin to decide what kind of friends they are willing to be. Silver and green. Cold light on colder plates. The next morning, under the enchanted ceiling's pale sky, Ron walks to the Slytherin table like it is a plank. Silver dishes gleam. Steam curls from tureens of porridge, from platters of sausages, from a silver rack of toast, cut with almost military precision. Conversations run low and smooth, a river of murmurs and the occasional sharp laugh. He feels every stare as he reaches for a slice of toast, hand just slightly less steady than he wants it to be. The bench shifts. Someone sits down opposite him, close enough that Ron can smell expensive soap and something faintly medicinal, like polished wood and potions. Draco Malfoy looks perfectly at home. Robes immaculate, hair in place, expression mild. He butters his toast with careful, unhurried strokes, as if the whole world has been arranged for his convenience. He has been planning this. "So," Draco says without looking up at first, "Weasley." The name is soft, almost amused. Then he does look, grey eyes weighing, cataloguing. Interesting choice the hat made, considering our conversation on the train. Ron swallows. The memory flashes up. Draco's hand offered, his own not taking it. Harry's easy laugh in the compartment, Hermione's bright questions, the way the world tilted when the Sorting Hat whispered Slytherin in his ear. "It's a hat," Ron mutters, "not a prophet." Draco's mouth curves, not quite a smile. Hats don't argue, Weasley. People do. Houses do. Families certainly do. He leans in a fraction, voice lower now, meant for Ron and the silver between them. "Yours, for instance. Blood traitors," some would say, very loudly. The word lands like a stone. Ron feels the weight of it. His father's patched robes, his mother's second-hand wand, the way people in Diagon Alley sometimes looked at them with a mix of pity and contempt. He knows everything Draco is not saying, poor, numerous, loud about muggles. Draco spreads jam, neat and thin. But you are here, in Slytherin, which means you are not entirely like them. A pause. There are ways to make that clear, to fit in properly. He has been planning this too, Ron thinks, the offer dressed up as observation, protection, wrapped in poison. Around them, the table is a ring of cold eyes and listening ears, older students with prefect badges, first years already learning to watch before they speak. Ron's survival instinct flares. He pictures detentions, hexes in the corridors, the slow grind of being the wrong kind of Slytherin. Then another image. Harry, grinning over chocolate frogs, Hermione frowning thoughtfully at a page, then looking up when he jokes, the way they looked at him like he belonged with them after only a few hours. He looks at her. She looks at him. In his mind, they are still on that train before the hat, before this table. "What are you asking?" Ron says, keeping his voice flat. "Exactly." Draco tilts his head, pleased that Ron has put it into words. "Only that you decide who you stand with. Slytherin looks after its own. We can make certain stories about your family matter less. If you are useful, if you are loyal." Loyal. The word twists. To whom? To what? Ron feels the decision point like a blade at his throat. If he renounces the Weasleys, if he laughs at the right jokes, if he lets Draco set the terms, his life here could be easy, or at least survivable. The banked hunger in him, ambition he has never named, stirs at the thought of not being last, not being overlooked. But there is a line he cannot quite make himself cross. Not yet. I'm Slytherin now, Ron says slowly. I'll stand with my house. He meets Draco's eyes, lets him see that he means it. But I don't forget where I come from. You shouldn't either. A moment of understanding passes between them. Not agreement, recognition. Draco studies him, then nods once. We'll see, he says. Breakfast is only the beginning, Weasley. As Draco turns back to his food, as the murmurs swell again, Ron realizes he has not escaped the test. He has only postponed the price, and the next move, from Gryffindor Tower or the dungeons, is already on its way. The dungeon is bright and cold at the front. Ron sits there anyway. Snape has ordered Slytherin to the first 2 rows, Gryffindor behind, so Ron ends up almost dead centre. Cauldrons gleaming, the blackboard a looming wall of chalked instructions. When he looks sideways across the narrow aisle, Harry is there. Hermione beside him, Quill already poised, eyes scanning every line as if she can drink the lesson whole. He has been planning this, he realizes. Not the sorting, not the colours on his tie, but this moment of collision. The world where he walks down from the Gryffindor table to sit with them, and the world where he stays here in green and silver, while Harry looks back at him from red and gold. 2 worlds, separated by a strip of stone floor. Snape sweeps in, robes billowing, eyes already narrowed. The familiar script plays out, but the angles are different. He sneers at Neville, at Seamus, at a Hufflepuff who has wandered into the wrong classroom. He looks over Ron once, notes the Slytherin crest, moves on. It is like standing under an umbrella while everyone else gets rained on. When he starts on Harry, it is worse. The questions are knives, fame, arrogance, ignorance, all wrapped together. Ron feels the old, instinctive surge. Jump in, crack a joke, take the hit instead. But the room is watching. Draco is watching. The older Slytherins are relaxed, almost lazy, in their chairs. This is how it is meant to go. Snape takes points from Gryffindor for breathing too loudly. Awards Slytherin 5 for Draco's measured answer that Hermione had clearly known first. Ron feels the unfairness like grit between his teeth, and at the same time, a strange, shameful ease. They are not going to come for him today. So he learns. Fast. He laughs when the others laugh, just enough. Not too eager. He keeps his head down when talk drifts toward blood and names and who sits with whom at what bank table in Gringotts. When someone mentions his father in the context of ministry raids, Ron just shrugs, lets the moment slide past. He knows enough to let them think they know everything. Publicly, he leans into it. Lets his sarcasm sharpen, lets a comment about Longbottom's clumsiness land a little harder than it needs to. When a second-year Slytherin calls Hermione a know-it-all mudblood, Ron does not laugh, but he does not object. His silence is noted, accepted. Privately, it stings. In the quiet of his 4-poster, curtains drawn, he takes out parchment. Starts a letter to his mum about Snape, about Harry, about how it feels to wear the wrong colours. Another to Ginny, promising he is still him. He looks at the words until they blur, then folds the letters down smaller, and tucks them into the bottom of his trunk. Unsent. Pattern interrupt. Halfway through October, Harry's potion starts to curdle. In the middle of Snape's monologue, Ron sees it. The flame too high, the order of ingredients wrong by one careless turn. Hermione's hand twitches, but she does not dare speak. Snape is pacing toward them. Ron's quill moves before he can think. 3 words on a scrap torn from the margin. Stir counterclockwise now. He flicks it across the aisle with a practiced, lazy motion, as if he is discarding rubbish. Harry catches it. He looks at Ron. Ron looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. Not truce, not surrender. Just recognition of the thin line they are both walking. Harry adjusts the potion in time. The colour settles. Snape's eyes linger, suspicious, then move on. A Slytherin girl 2 seats down glances over. "What was that?" she asks. Ron is already staring straight ahead, face blank, hands folded. "Nothing," he says, "just rubbish." He does not look away from the board until she does. And in that small, invisible act, his mask settles a little more firmly into place. The bathroom is full of dust and the slow drip of a broken tap. Hours earlier, there had been candles and pumpkin lanterns and the warm roar of the Great Hall. Halloween at Hogwarts, platters refilling themselves, ghosts sweeping overhead, Slytherin and Gryffindor tables throwing glances like hexes. Ron sits among the green ties, laughing at a joke he does not find especially funny, watching the red and gold across the aisle without seeming to look. Then Quirrell bursts in, turban askew, face pale, stammering, "Troll! In the dungeons! Thought you ought to know." He collapses. The hall erupts. The word troll moves through the students like a spell, stripping away bravado, leaving only noise. Dumbledore's voice cracks like thunder, orders flying, prefects shouting. The houses are herded apart, streams of colour forced into neat lines. Slytherins toward the dungeons, Gryffindors toward their tower. Ron is swept with his house, a current of green moving fast and disciplined. Some of them smirk when they see Gryffindors bunch and panic, first years clutching each other. Fear looks different on different people. Slytherin has learned to wear it under the skin. He walks with them, steps measured, mind racing. He has been planning this new life in Slytherin like a campaign, every word, every silence, every look chosen to keep him safe. But at the end of the table before the rush began, he saw Hermione Granger rise and leave, books clutched like armour. He knows she never came back. On the stairs, a hushed fragment reaches him, a Hufflepuff whispering to a friend. "They can't find that Muggle-born girl, the one who was crying in the bathroom." Another voice. "Granger." The name lands like a dropped stone. Ron looks up the staircase, where Gryffindor robes vanish around a corner. He looks down, where the Slytherins move as one toward safety and stone. He sees, for a heartbeat, Harry's back in the crowd ahead, the messy hair unmistakable as it slips sideways, not following the prefects. Harry breaks from the line with a Gryffindor friend, vanishing into a side corridor. No one is watching Ron. He feels the fork in the path like a physical thing. Slytherin safety, or the sick twist in his stomach at the thought of Hermione alone with a troll. He steps sideways, 1 pace, 2, then he is moving in the opposite direction, footsteps quick, but not running, face set in the careful blankness he has learned in this house. He has been planning this mask. He did not plan this choice. The castle turns strange at night, shadows longer, doors unfamiliar. Harry and his Gryffindor companion race down one corridor. Ron takes another, trusting instinct and the faint echo of their footsteps. He rounds a corner and almost collides with the troll. It is worse than the stories. Huge, grey, the smell of it thick in the air. A club like a fallen tree. It lumbers toward a doorway hanging off its hinges. From inside, a girl's scream. Ron's wand is in his hand before he thinks. "Oi!" His voice cracks, but it is loud. The troll turns, small eyes blinking. Behind it, Harry and his friend skid into view from the far side, red and gold ties bright against the stone. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Then everything happens at once. Harry darts forward, reckless, grabbing a shard of broken pipe and hurling it at the troll's face. It bounces off its thick skin, but the motion draws its gaze. Hermione, crouched behind a sink, shouts, "It's balance, Harry! It's top-heavy, you idiot!" Her voice is sharp, precise even when terrified. They look at each other across the chaos. A moment of understanding passes between them. Harry will distract. Ron will strike. Hermione will think. Ron circles, keeping to the opposite wall, wand raised. His heart hammers. He has practiced spells in the Slytherin common room alone, whispering them into the dark. He knows this one. Wingardium Leviosa. His voice is clearer now, cutting through the bathroom's echo. The Trolls Club jerks upward, wrenched from its hand, hangs for a suspended second, then crashes down on its own skull. The impact shakes the floor. Dust rains from the ceiling. The troll sways, then collapses with a ground, shuddering thud. Silence. Just the drip of the tap, Hermione's ragged breathing, Harry's disbelieving laugh. 3 first years, 2 house colours, 1 fallen monster between them. More than any description could contain. Hermione stands, slowly. Her robes are torn, hair wild, eyes bright with shock and furious relief. Harry looks at Ron. Ron looks at Harry. He looks at her. She looks at him. The lines on the house tables feel very far away. Then footsteps, adult, purposeful. McGonagall, Snape, Quirrell, bursting in with wands drawn. The scene must look absurd. A Gryffindor boy, a Slytherin boy, a Muggle-born witch, and a stunned mountain of troll. McGonagall's eyes move from Harry's tie to Ron's, then to Hermione's face. Confusion, then calculation, then something like reluctant respect. "Explain," she says, voice thin with strain. They exchange a quick, conspiratorial look over the troll's body. 3 stories, 3 houses, 1 secret. In that shared glance, the first fracture in the house walls appears, and something else begins to form in the space between. Whatever they say next, they will say it together. The classroom is dark and smells of chalk and dust and old spells. Moonlight cuts a pale rectangle across abandoned desks. Later that night, 3rd-floor corridor, 2 turns past the locked trophy case. Harry walks with Hermione, steps soft on the stone. Ron is already there, leaning against a desk, wand lit, green and silver tie, loosened, like a truce flag. He has been planning this, Harry realizes. The way the desks are pulled into a rough triangle, the door wedged with a folded bit of parchment, even the curtain drawn just enough to hide the light from the corridor. "Extra practice," Hermione says, as if trying the alibi on her tongue. "Charms revision." Ron snorts. "If Filch asks, I'm tutoring you on how not to get lost near the dungeons." But his eyes flick to the door, sharp, measuring. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. They are all lying, but they are all here. It becomes a pattern. Not every night, not enough to be obvious, but often enough that the unused classroom starts to feel like a 4th house, hidden between the others. They spread books and parchment across the desks. Hermione's notes are neat, colour-coded, layered with references to things she has read far beyond first year. Harry's handwriting is messier, full of Quidditch diagrams in the margins and small, careful comments about how spells feel when the magic moves through him. Ron brings something else, gossip from the Slytherin common room, the conversations that unspool in low voices by green firelight, which prefects look the other way, which families talk about the Dark Lord as if he were a bad investment rather than a nightmare, which first years flinch when Draco Malfoy laughs. He sketches seating plans of the long black table, shows them where the older students cluster, who listens when Snape talks about proper wizarding blood. More than any description could contain, those rough maps make the house feel like a system, not a snake-shaped monster. By day, his world is different. He laughs at some of the jokes about Gryffindors has to keep his place. He lets Draco mock Harry's flying, then quietly steers the conversation away from Hermione's parents, or cuts across when someone says mudblood with too much relish. Small deflections, misplaced directions, a forgotten letter here, a delayed message there. Harry watches him and knows Ron is playing a dangerous game in corridors lined with stone and expectation. Hermione sees it too. At first, Slytherin is a single word in her mind, underlined, filed next to every book she has read about dark wizards. But then there is Ron, hunched over her parchment, muttering about how blood inheritance laws are written to favour ancient houses like Malfoy and not, and how that traps people like his family at the edge of power. "It's not just who's evil," he says one night. "It's who can afford to pretend they aren't." She looks at him differently after that. Slytherin, she realizes, is not stamped on his soul. It is wrapped around him like a cloak he did not entirely choose. One, the hat draped over old fears of being overlooked. She starts to ask quieter questions. Which Slytherins seem uncertain? Which ones look tired when the others brag? They look at each other, and the old stories about houses begin to loosen. The near catch comes on a Thursday. Footsteps in the corridor, sudden and sharp. Filch's voice, grumbling about students out of bed, growing louder. Harry's heart slams against his ribs. Hermione's ink bottle trembles on the desk. Ron moves first. Wand out, light doused, he's at the door in 3 strides. "I'll go," he whispers. "If someone sees, it makes more sense I'm here." His tie is already straightening itself, colours snapping back into place. He slips into the corridor, cloak swirling green, as he turns the opposite way from the approaching steps. For a breath, Harry and Hermione can only listen to Filch's mutter, to the faint, careful cadence of Ron's voice as he invents a story on the spot. Then another voice joins them. Not Filch, colder, younger, a prefect. And whoever it is, they say Ron's full name. The corridor is narrow and full of echoes. Ron stands between a caretaker and a prefect, spine straight, voice steady. Harry and Hermione wait under the cloak, hearts pounding, listening as he spins a half-truth about getting lost, about looking for a bathroom. The prefect hesitates, Filch grumbles, footsteps recede. Only then does Ron walk past their hiding place, not glancing their way, but slowing just enough that they can slip out behind him. Later, back in the common room under green and silver, the night's danger turns into information. A word here, a name there. Snape, Quirrell, Stone. Slytherins gossip differently. They trade rumours like currency. Ron learns to listen. He has been planning this without quite naming it, collecting fragments from older students who complain about extra guard shifts. From Draco boasting about his godfather's mysterious tasks, from a 7th-year muttering that Quirrell smells of burnt herbs and fear. He brings it all to the next secret meeting by the fire in an unused classroom. Harry looks at him. She looks at him. Ron lays out what he's heard, where and from whom, like pieces on a board. Not just Snape is up to something, but which nights he vanishes, which teachers argue behind closed doors, which passwords change. Hermione's first instinct is still Gryffindor directness. Go to McGonagall, confront, demand answers, but Ron shakes his head. Not yet. Not when they know so little. He suggests something else. Let the staff's suspicions grind against each other. Feed a hint about Quirrell's odd behaviour to one professor, a carefully chosen question about Snape's late patrols to another, and watch who moves where. Why rush onto the pitch when you can move the goalposts first? There is a thin, wry humour in the way he says it, understated. A boy raised on second-hand robes and hand-me-down stories discovering that in this magical world, knowledge itself is a kind of Gringotts vault, and he can finally have something that is his. When they finally go through the trapdoor, it is not a wild charge. It is a calculated breach. Ron has mapped the risks in his head, weighed who is best at flying, who is best at logic, who can keep their nerve when the lights go out. By the time they reach the chessboard, he is almost calm. The stone pieces loom. The air tastes of dust and old enchantments. Ron looks at the board and sees more than carved knights and bishops. He sees every overheard whisper, every choice that brought them here, arranged into patterns. He has been planning this, he realizes. Every game he played at the Burrow, every strategy he admired in stories of famous generals, every moment this year, when he had to think 3 moves ahead just to keep up with Slytherin politics. His sacrifice is still a blow. It still hurts. But when he steps forward, when he offers himself as the piece that must fall, he does it knowing exactly what it buys. Time. Position. A path for Harry to reach the stone. Heroism, yes. Also a move in a larger game he is learning to love. In the hospital wing afterwards, when Dumbledore explains, Harry hears about love and protection. Hermione hears about ancient magic and choices. Ron, drowsy under potions, listens for the gaps. Who knew about the stone? Who was allowed to suspect whom? Why a headmaster would leave a puzzle trail a clever first year could follow. The end-of-year feast is a study in contrasts. Slytherin banners hang triumphant, green and silver flooding the hall. Ron sits between Draco and a quiet boy from a half-blood family, listening to their low-voiced plans for summer. Across the room, Harry and Hermione sit at the Gryffindor table, watching him with an expression that is more than any description could contain. Then the candles flicker. The banners shift. Red and gold swallow the green. Dumbledore's voice rolls out, warm and amused, praising unusual bravery and the courage to play a dangerous game for the sake of others. His eyes move over Harry, over Hermione. Then they find Ron. Linger. A moment of understanding passes between them. Slytherin loses the house cup. The table around him groans and mutters. Draco's jaw tightens. Someone curses under their breath. Ron feels the sting too. Ambition does not enjoy being thwarted. But when he glances up, Dumbledore is still looking his way, the faintest nod acknowledging something that will never make it into any official speech. I see what you're becoming. Ron looks across the hall. Harry meets his gaze. They look at each other. The rivalry, the friendship, the future, all layered together. The game, he realizes, has only just begun. The Burrow is loud and bright and full of smoke from the kitchen, but when Ron steps out of the flue, it all goes quiet for half a heartbeat. Then Molly is there, arms, apron, flower on her cheek. She crushes him to her, like she can squeeze the green out of his robes by force alone. "My Ronnie," she whispers into his ear, voice wobbling. "My brave boy." Arthur hangs back at first. He looks at the Slytherin crest on Ron's trunk, at the slightly sharper set to his shoulders, then walks forward and takes the handle from him like it is any other summer. "Good year?" he asks, too casual, eyes searching Ron's face for things he does not know how to name. The twins break the tension the way they always do. Fred salutes. "Welcome home, our little snake." George bows. "Do we hiss now when we say good night, or is that only on special occasions?" The joke lands halfway. Ron snorts, but his ears go red. Molly snaps at them, but not very hard. Dinner that night is crowded. Chicken, potatoes, a cauldron of gravy, Percy's prefect badge catching the light every time he moves. Conversation circles Quidditch exams, Charlie's last letter from Romania. It takes effort, like steering a broom away from a storm cloud everyone can see. It's Percy who finally brushes it. He clears his throat, straightens his back. "House reputation matters," he says, aiming for neutral and missing by an inch. "Responsibility, image, who you associate with. You can't just drift." He looks at Ron, then away, as if that softens it. Ron's fork pauses halfway to his mouth. "I know that," he mutters. He has been planning this answer all term, the calm, reasonable explanation about ambition and choice, about how not every Slytherin is Malfoy. The words knot in his throat under his brother's eyes. Arthur tries to help and fumbles it. "Plenty of good witches and wizards from every house," he says quickly. "Look at Slughorn, respected man. Connections at the ministry." He smiles too wide, like a man reassuring himself the bank is still solvent after a bad letter from Gringotts. Molly worries a napkin between her fingers. "I just don't want you hurt," she says. "People talk. Children can be cruel." Her eyes shine. She's thinking of pure-blood politics and corridor whispers and a sun in green among a world that expects red and gold. Later, when the house has settled into its familiar creaks and snores, an owl taps at Ron's window. A single letter, thick parchment, Hogwarts seal. His stomach flips. For a moment he thinks of detentions, of some rule he didn't know he'd broken. It's from McGonagall. Her handwriting is precise, uncompromising. She thanks him in a few spare lines for his conduct in the dungeons, for his work with Harry, for the way he stood his ground when it mattered. "The sorting," she writes, "is a beginning, not a verdict. Our choices define us more than any table in a hall. At the bottom, a postscript in a different ink, a different hand. Dumbledore's. Very short. Mr. Weasley, I look forward to seeing what you make of this opportunity." He has been planning this, Ron thinks suddenly. This gentle push, this reminder that the game board is larger than house colours. He folds the letter carefully and hides it under his pillow. In his room, the walls are the same. Peeling orange Chudley Cannons poster, corners held with spellotape. A pile of hand-me-down robes, a chess set, missing a pawn. On the bedspread, his green tie lies coiled like a small, sleeping snake. He picks it up, thumb running over the silver thread, then looks at the cannon's roaring lion on the poster, all blazing orange and desperate hope. Symbols, facing off in a narrow room under a crooked roof. He looks at one. He looks at the other. A moment of understanding passes between them, or maybe just within him. He's not sure yet which world he belongs to, or whether he is meant to bridge them. Downstairs, someone laughs in their sleep. Upstairs, Ron sits alone, tie in one hand, Quidditch dreams on the wall, feeling like the summer itself is holding its breath, waiting to see which way he will move. The hissing comes first. No words, just a thin, sliding sound in the stone, like the walls themselves are breathing. September again. The Hogwarts Express shudders into motion and Ron sits in a compartment that feels smaller than last year, though nothing has changed except the way people look at him. 2 second-year Hufflepuffs pass the door, whispering. One word carries clearly through the glass. Snake. He has been planning this return in quiet, stubborn pieces. Better marks, less stumbling, show them he belongs. A new set of second-hand robes carefully pressed, his wand polished, his prefect hopeful brother's advice folded into the back of his Transfiguration book. He walks the corridor once, twice, counting faces, testing whether anyone will meet his eyes. Some do. A few Slytherins nod, cool and assessing, as if he is a piece on a board they are still deciding how to use. Others smirk. A third-year girl with a silver serpent pin leans close as he passes and says, softly, Weasley Snake, like it is a title and an insult at the same time. The year begins under that murmur. In the Slytherin common room, the green light looks harsher. Pansy watches him when he laughs at something stupid Blaise says, not asks idle questions about his father's ministry job that do not feel idle at all. How much does your father know about Muggle-born protections? Does he tell you everything? Ron answers carefully. Not too eager, not too cold. He can feel the line under his feet, invisible but real. On the other side of the castle, at the Gryffindor table, Harry and Hermione sit close together, heads bent over a letter from home. He looks at her. She looks at him. They do not look at Ron. When the first attack happens, the castle's mood changes in a single night. Mrs. Norris stiff and hanging, the words on the wall wet and vicious. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware. In Slytherin, the reaction splits the house like a fault line. Some boys are thrilled, voices low and excited. Ancient secrets, old power, finally stirring. Others, especially those with Muggle-born cousins or half-blood mothers, go quiet, calculating how quickly the rest of the school will decide they are all guilty by association. Ron feels both currents at once. At breakfast, a Gryffindor second year he helped in charms last term pulls her plate closer when he sits nearby, as if fear is contagious. In the corridor, a Slytherin first year with a Muggle-born sister asks, almost accusing, "You don't really think it's our lot, do you?" He does not know what he thinks. Then Draco starts holding court. "Enemies of the air," Draco says one evening, voice echoing off the damp stone as a cluster of Slytherins lean in. Well, if they're scared, they should be. Mud. Muggle-borns never belonged here anyway. His eyes shine with a cruel, borrowed certainty. More his father's than his own. Laughter ripples around them. Not everyone joins in. Blaise looks away. The girl with the silver pin studies Ron instead. Ron's stomach goes cold. It is one thing to trade insults on the Quidditch pitch, another to hear his own house speak like this while students lie petrified in hospital beds. He remembers Hermione's hand ink-stained on a library table, her voice explaining some bit of magical theory even he could follow. He remembers Harry's face when they read about blood inheritance and old families at Gringotts, the way his friends' new titles did not change the boy who still hated bullies. A moment of understanding passes between them in his memory, more than any description could contain. What would they see now if they looked at him? Later, walking alone through the dungeons, his footsteps small against the endless stone, Ron hears it. A faint, slithering hiss in the walls, moving just ahead of him, just out of reach. It is not water. It is not wind. He stops. The sound stops. The corridor is empty. For the first time, he wonders if the danger everyone fears really is coming from his side of the castle, or from somewhere even closer. Behind him, in the dark, the hissing starts again. The hissing lingers in his ears long after it fades from the stones. December. The Polyjuice plan is already on the table when Harry finally says what they have all been circling. "We need inside Slytherin," he murmurs, voice low in the unused classroom. "Not just Malfoy, the whole structure." Ron looks at him. She looks at him. Hermione stands between them, ink on her fingers, notes spread like a tiny Gringotts ledger across the desk. He has been planning this, Ron realizes. Not the potion, that's Hermione's world, but the angle. The use of Ron's house as a key, not just an obstacle. Ron knows Slytherin routines now. Who walks late patrols to the common room? Which prefects actually check passwords, which only look? Who sits where at the fire? Who controls the card games? Who carries news from older years down like a poisonous letter no one admits to reading? So the plan changes. They will not blunder in as strangers. They will become two very specific boys whose absence will be noted, whose opinions will be believed. Millicent's hair, Crabbe and Goyle's hairs. Ron hears himself outlining which is more dangerous, which table to approach, which corridor to avoid, because Mulciber likes to lurk there and make first years cry. He hears it and wonders when his knowledge of rot became this precise. Later, in the bathroom, the potion is thick and wrong-looking, steam curling like a question around the cracked tiles. When Ron swallows, when his bones twist and his hands broaden into Goyle's, something in him recoils before he even sees the mirror. The face that looks back is stupidly heavy-lidded, but everyone in Slytherin knows what it means. Pure blood, unquestioned, safe. Walking into the common room as Goyle feels like walking into his own mind, turned inside out. The room is all green light and low voices, the same as every night, but from the outside, the rituals show their seams. The way conversation pauses when certain names are spoken, the way first years glance up before laughing, checking for permission. He sits where Goyle always sits. Malfoy talks, smooth and bright with borrowed certainty. Ron forces himself to nod at the right moments, to let ugly words pass his lips like stale bread. Mudblood this, blood traitor that. If he doesn't say them, if he doesn't sneer when Malfoy sneers, someone will notice. So he parrots. Each time, his stomach twists. Each time he thinks of Hermione, of his mum, of his dad shaking hands with Muggleborns at ministry functions. Pattern interrupt. Then he hears his own surname. "Weasley," an older boy says near the fire, voice lazy and cold. "Good example for you lot. That's what happens when a family forgets its place. Blood like that, wasted on Muggle lovers. His brother's in with Dumbledore. The younger one, Ronald, is already half lost. Sorted wrong, if you ask me. Watch yourselves. You end up like that, you're not welcome here." Younger students nod. His name becomes a warning, a story told to keep everyone in line. He sits 10 feet away wearing Goyle's face and no one knows. He looks around and sees his house as it truly is. Ambition braided with fear, cruelty spoken like a shared language, arrogance hiding the simple terror of being cast out, more than any description could contain. Back in the bathroom, as the polyjuice burns away and his own freckles reappear, Ron grips the sink. His reflection looks pale, eyes wide, but it is his. If he doesn't shape Slytherin from within, he realizes, people like Draco will, and they already are. The chamber is open and full of whispers, not here, not yet, but in the corridors above. In the great hall where candles flicker and house tables have become fault lines, in the common rooms where first years huddle and older students speak the word Slytherin like a curse, By February, the fear has curdled into something sharper. A Ravenclaw boy stands up at dinner and says, loud enough for professors to hear, that the safest thing would be to send all Slytherins home. A Hufflepuff girl mutters that they should close the dungeons, brick them up, let the snakes find another school. Ron hears versions of it every day. He walks the length of the Slytherin table and feels eyes follow him like wands. He has been planning this, he realizes, long before the words form. Some stubborn, furious part of him has been keeping score since the first whisper of heir of Slytherin and the first glance that slid from his crest to his hair. Weasley. Slytherin, a contradiction that makes people's mouths twist. If something in his house has gone wrong, if the monster belongs to their founder, then he will be the one who walks toward it. The guilt is a low, constant ache. Colin, Nearly Headless Nick, Justin, Hermione, names like a list of charges. He knows with a clarity that hurts that if he were in Gryffindor red instead of Slytherin green, no one would be watching him this way. No one would fall silent when he enters a room. Anger flickers under the guilt, sharp and bright. Slytherin doesn't equal monster. He will prove it or break himself trying. So when they find the answer in Myrtle's bathroom, when the sink opens and the pipe yawns wide, he doesn't hesitate. Harry looks at him. He looks at Harry. A moment of understanding passes between them. They jump. The descent is worse than he imagined. Cold stone, the stench of old water and older magic, bones scattered like careless punctuation. This is Salazar Slytherin's world, carved into the roots of the castle, and Ron walks through it wearing the man's serpent on his chest. He feels the weight of it with every step, as if the walls are waiting to see what kind of Slytherin he will be. When the basilisk comes, when Harry stands alone with the sword and the echo of a boy who will become Voldemort, Ron's task is smaller, but no less sharp. Keep Ginny breathing. Keep the way out clear. Trust Harry. He watches the duel in flashes, fangs, feathers, the sword arcing in a line of impossible silver, more than any description could contain. Later, when the diary bleeds ink and Tom Riddle's name twists into "I am Lord Voldemort," the revelation lands like a physical blow. The heir of Slytherin was a half-blood who remade himself, who took the house's hunger for greatness and turned it into a weapon against the whole magical world. Ron feels sick, and not only from the smell of basilisk blood. This is the legacy people see when they look at his tie. In Dumbledore's office, after the quiet is almost worse than the battle. The portraits pretend to sleep. Fawkes dozes. Harry speaks, then falls silent. Dumbledore looks at Ron for a long time, as if reading a very old letter. Voldemort was Slytherin's heir by blood and by choice, he says at last. You are neither. You are a boy the Hat believed could do terrible damage to that legacy, if you wished. House is not destiny, Mr. Weasley. It is a set of stories. You may inherit them, or you may rewrite them. Ron swallows. His hands are still shaking. He does not feel like a reformer of anything. But I'm still Slytherin, he manages. So you are, Dumbledore agrees, eyes bright, which means your choices will matter more than most. Ron walks back to the dungeons later, past students who stare and whisper. The stone feels different under his feet, heavy but not suffocating. They look at each other, the carved serpents and the boy in green, and for the first time he thinks, this place does not own me. I get a say. He has been planning this without knowing it, not how to escape his house, but how to change what it means. The chamber is closed again. Its legacy is not, and somewhere in the dark, the next choice waits. Cold night, Glass rattling in the train window, breath fogging the compartment air. Third year begins with darkness, not wonder. The lights fail, the train shudders, and Ron feels it before he sees it. Something dragging the warmth out of the world, out of his chest, as if it has been planning this since the first time he stepped onto the platform with second-hand robes and too many brothers. The Dementor's hand reaches, the door slides open, and his mind is not full of spiders, or even the echo of his mother's voice. It is the Slytherin table at his first feast, silver and green, laughter like knives. His own housemates looking him up and down, Draco's lazy drawl, "Weasley, are you sure you're in the right place?" and the way the whole bench leaned away from him as if poverty were contagious. The memory swells, distorts, becomes more than any description could contain. He hears it again on the train now, the snickering, the scrape of plates, the word blood, said like a joke that does not include him. He is on the floor before he quite knows he has fallen. When Lupin drives the Dementor back, Ron's hand is shaking around his wand, fingers white, knuckles stiff, as if he is still clinging to the edge of that bench. Later, in the defense classroom, the boggart waits in the wardrobe. The room smells of dust and chalk and nervous sweat. In another world, his fear would be spiders. Here, the shape that bursts out when it faces Ron is taller, thinner, draped in Slytherin green. Draco. Not as he is, but as he could be. Prefect badge gleaming Quidditch captain's cloak, the head boy pin catching the light. Harry and Hermione at his shoulders, laughing with him, not even looking at Ron. Behind them, the Slytherin table again, only this time his place is empty. Someone else's bag, someone else's books, someone else's stories filling the gap, as if he had never been there. The class laughs, but it is uneasy. Lupin tells him to change it, so Ron forces the image to wobble, to sprout ridiculous features. Yet even with a clown's nose and flapping shoes, the core of it is the same. Replaced, outgrown, left behind. That fear is a scent in Slytherin. Others smell it. Older students lean against the cold stone walls, watching him walk past. They make quiet offers that sound almost kind. "You're wasting yourself trailing after Potter. You know everything about him. You could lead, not follow." A study group here, a whispered tactic there, a hint that if he just stopped holding back, he could have power, respect, a future that did not depend on anyone else's name. When news of Sirius Black spreads through the castle, Ron listens harder than most. A friend who betrayed James Potter to Voldemort, a man who laughed when the house blew apart. He looks at Harry. She looks at him. The story hits him like a physical blow because it fits too neatly with the shape of his nightmares. Loyalty turned weapon, trust used as a doorway. He cannot stop asking himself which side of that story he is closer to, the one betrayed or the one who breaks. One night, on the astronomy tower, the castle roof cold beneath them, Ron and Hermione sit with their cloaks wrapped tight. The stars look distant, like another bank of fires no one has invited him to. Wind tugs at Hermione's hair. She waits. "Sometimes," he says quietly, "I feel like I'm one bad choice away from ending up on the wrong side of everything." Hermione turns. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them, sharp and fragile. She opens her mouth to answer, and the tower door creaks behind them. Footsteps approaching, carrying a new offer. Ron does not yet know he will have to refuse. The tower door opens on a whisper of hinges and the soft murmur of voices. Not an intruder, not a professor. Just Harry, framed in the doorway with the firelight at his back, Ron's green and silver tie, stark against the red and gold world behind him. It is past curfew. The Gryffindor common room should be empty. It is not. Hermione has been planning this in her own way, with study schedules and patrol maps and a careful reading of every rule that does not quite say what it thinks it says. Harry has been planning this more simply. A hand on Ron's sleeve in the corridor, a quiet, "Come on, no one's up, you're safe with me." Between them, the plan becomes real. Ron steps through the portrait hole like someone crossing a border. The fat lady huffs, already scandalized. Hermione's prefect badge is one thin layer of protection between this moment and a week's worth of detentions. He looks around, red armchairs, knitted throws, chessboards stacked in a corner, the fire banked low. A world he almost had, and did not. Neville is the first to see him. He freezes halfway through feeding Trevor a lettuce leaf, eyes wide, then slowly. He smiles. It is awkward, uncertain but real. Ron lifts a hand in a half wave. The room does not explode. No one screams. Not everyone smiles. A knot of older Gryffindors at the far table goes quiet, quills stilled over parchment. One of them, a fifth-year chaser, with ink on her fingers, looks Ron up and down like he has tracked mud over a sacred rug. "You brought a Slytherin in here?" she asks Harry, voice low and sharp. Harry does not look away. "I brought my friend." They walk to the hearth. The pattern shifts. Hermione already has books spread across the table, maps of the castle, a rough chart of Filch's routes, a list of known secret passages. Strategy, layered and careful. Ron drops into the armchair opposite Harry and pulls the battered chess set toward them, pieces clacking as they wake. Planning, he understands. This language is older than house lines. He laughs with Neville when a knight swears at him for a risky move. He debates with Hermione over whether the third-floor corridor could be warded against staff detection. He and Harry bend over the board, firelight, painting them both in flickering gold, arguing quietly about which path through the school leaves the least chance of being seen. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them, more than any description could contain. Down in the dungeons, a Slytherin first year notices Ron's empty bed and says nothing. A second year does notice and asks later, casual as he can make it, "Where'd you get to?" Ron shrugs, offers half-truths about the library, about chess with an older student. The questions do not stop, but neither do the invitations that follow. If he can walk into Gryffindor, maybe they can walk out of their corners too. By the third such night, younger students have seen enough to start whispering. A Gryffindor second year watches Ron clap Neville on the shoulder and thinks, if he can sit here, maybe I can talk to that Slytherin girl in herbology. A Slytherin first year hears that Weasley spends evenings by the lion's fire and quietly stops laughing at the word mudblood in the common room. The pattern interrupt comes on a Wednesday. They lose track of time. Curfew passes, then the late patrol. When Ron finally slips out through the portrait hole, hair mussed, tie crooked, arms full of rolled parchment and a folded letter from Hermione to double-check, he nearly walks straight into Professor McGonagall. She stops. He stops. The corridor is very quiet. Her eyes take in everything, the tie, the parchment, the direction he is coming from. She looks at Harry, just behind him. She looks at Hermione, hovering in the doorway. He looks at her. She looks at him. For a heartbeat, Ron can feel the weight of every rule he is breaking. Then McGonagall steps aside. No lecture, no deduction of points. Just a long, measuring look that says she knows exactly what this means and is choosing, deliberately, not to end it. "Good night, Mr. Weasley," she says. Her voice is crisp, but something in it has shifted. Ron walks back toward the dungeons, heart pounding, carrying the knowledge that the walls of Hogwarts are not as solid as he was taught, and that an adult has seen and let it stand. The hall is bright and loud and full of calculation. October 1994. The enchanted ceiling burns with autumn storm clouds as Dumbledore announces the Tri-Wizard Tournament. Around Ron, the Slytherin table goes very still, then sharp. This is not a game here. It is a ladder, a contest of power, of prestige, of who will have their name carved into Hogwarts history and who will be remembered as background. He can feel it in the way they lean forward. Draco already looks like he has been planning this, quill scratching lists of likely champions and likely sponsors. Older Slytherins murmur about ministry connections, about foreign alliances, about what a champion's victory could buy in the adult world. Favours, seats. Doors opened at Gringotts. Ron listens, pulse quickening, because this is the language of being more than one of the Weasleys. When the goblet finally flares blue and spits out Durmstrang Beauxbatons, Hogwarts, the hall hums. Then it flares again. Harry Potter. The name drops into the silence like a stone into deep water. At the Slytherin table they do not gasp, they pivot. Of course, someone says coolly, Dumbledore's pet gets a second chance at glory. Another voice, lower, suggests a more intricate story. Potter must have tricked the goblet, fed it a fourth school, used some obscure magical loophole. He has been planning this. Dumbledore has. The Ministry has. The theories multiply, each one making Harry larger, more deliberate, more dangerous, and each one making Ron smaller. He stares at the staff table at Harry's stunned face under the Gryffindor banners. The old ache wakes up at once. Harry, the youngest seeker in a century. Harry with the vault at the bank. Harry with the letters, the fame, the world looking at him like he is everything. Ron knows Harry did not put his name in. He also knows that does not matter. Draco leans in, voice soft enough to be almost kind. Funny, isn't it, Weasley? All that time you spent helping him with homework, with Quidditch, with that little adventure under the school in second year. And now he accidentally becomes the most important boy in Britain again, almost like he only walks with you when it suits him. Others join, a trickle of comments, then a stream. Sidekick, spare, shield. They talk about how useful it is politically to have a loyal Weasley at your elbow when you are courting public opinion. Ron laughs once too loudly because the alternative is admitting how precisely the words hit. In Gryffindor, the distance between them had always been a sulk, a slammed door, a muttered complaint. In Slytherin, distance is a weapon. He begins to sharpen it. He stops sitting near Harry in class, stops lingering after lessons. When Draco suggests, lightly, that they could coordinate their commentary about the tournament, raise certain doubts, question how fair it is that Potter keeps taking the spotlight, Ron does not refuse. He does not quite agree either. He just lets Draco walk beside him, lets the house see them together, lets the idea settle that his loyalty is no longer guaranteed. The night after the first task, the castle roars with relief and admiration. Harry and the dragon, fire and flight and applause. Ron does not go to the celebration in Gryffindor Tower. He sits alone in the Slytherin common room, green light rippling across the ceiling, like he is at the bottom of a deep lake. The Daily Prophet lies open on the low table. Harry's picture flies across the page, looping the horntail, grinning alive. The headline crowns him again. Ron looks at the moving image for a long time, face unreadable. He looks at Harry. Harry looks at him, endlessly repeating that perfect, distant victory. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them, or would if either of them were really there. Instead, there is only ink and old stone, and the quiet shift of something in Ron that is more than any description could contain. He reaches out, folds the paper in half, right through Harry's face. The music is already too loud when he pulls the robe over his head. The fabric smells faintly of attic dust and old soap. Christmas, 1994, boys' dormitory, Slytherin dungeon. The Yule Ball is an hour away. Ron looks down. The lace at his cuffs hangs in defeated curls. The green is not Slytherin emerald, not the rich, dark shade he sees in Malfoy's wardrobe. It is a sickly, washed-out thing, more pond scum than house pride. The sleeves don't quite reach his wrists. The hem drags, a fraying compromise between growth spurts and second-hand bargains. He has been planning this night in the vaguest possible way, imagining himself in something sharp, something that would finally make him look like he belonged in this house of polished shoes and polished sneers. Instead, there is this, a robe that shouts everything he has tried not to say, poor, hand-me-down, wrong. Down in the common room, the contrast is brutal. Malfoy stands near the fire in tailored black with silver frogging, robes that fall just so when he walks. Nott wears deep green velvet. Even Crabbe and Goyle have robes that fit. The girls glitter in silk and satin, in jewels that catch the torchlight and throw it back as if the magical world itself is pinned to their throats. Malfoy turns, looks him over once, slowly. His mouth curls. Did the bank send you the wrong parcel, Weasley, or did Gringotts finally start offering charity? Laughter, sharp and clean. Pansy adds, it's almost festive like a tablecloth. In Gryffindor, the mockery would have been softer, wrapped in jokes and eye rolls. Here, the game is cruelty as currency. The choice is simple and impossible. Laugh or let them see it land. He forces a crooked grin. Jealous you didn't think of it first? His voice sounds thin even to him. They move on. He stays where he is for a moment, feeling the weight of the lace at his wrists like shackles. Later, in the great hall, the world explodes into light and music. Ice sculptures, enchanted snow, a ceiling full of stars. He walks in with the Slytherins, a ragged note in a perfect chord. Then he sees her. Hermione on the stairs, blue robes that float when she walks, hair sleek and shining, Victor Crumb at her side like a carved statue come to life. She looks older. She looks like she has always belonged to this world. She looks at him. He looks at her. For a heartbeat he is proud, fiercely, stupidly proud that this is his friend. Then Crumb offers her his arm. She takes it. The pride twists, jealousy, hot and sour, hurt because she did not write him a letter about this, did not ask, a sense of being left behind by both of them. Harry with his fame and firebolt grace, Hermione with her new, effortless poise. On the edge of the dance floor, he hovers, pretending to watch the champions, really watching her laugh at something Crumb says. Green and red and blue robes spin together, house colours blurring into something more than any description could contain. You look interesting, a voice says at his elbow. He turns, Daphne Greengrass in pale green silk, expression unreadable. Do you want to dance, Weasley? Not mocking, not kind, curious maybe, or pity. He knows every eye will follow if he walks out there with her. A Slytherin girl, and the shabby Slytherin boy. An olive branch or a spectacle. For a second, he imagines taking her hand, letting the music carry him into their circle, proving that lace and poverty cannot bar him from this floor. He imagines refusing, staying in the shadows where no one can laugh at his steps. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them, or almost does, then slips away. He shakes his head. Maybe later. She shrugs, already turning toward a taller boy in perfect robes. By midnight, his feet ache from standing still. He lingers at the margin as couples whirl past, green and red, and every colour in between, house lines dissolving under candlelight. He watches Harry dance with Parvati, Hermione with Crumb, Malfoy with Pansy, each orbit closed, complete. On the stone just beyond the light, Ron Weasley stands in robes that do not fit. 2 Slytherin for Gryffindor now, 2 Weasley for Slytherin ever. The music swells around him like a tide. He realizes with a slow, sinking clarity that he does not fully belong to either world. And somewhere, at the high table, a pair of careful eyes are already deciding how to use that. The graveyard comes to Hogwarts in fragments, not bone and ash, words, Harry's words. He sits in the hospital wing, white sheets, white light, the world narrowed to the space between his hands. Ron stands just inside the curtain, close enough to hear, far enough that Madame Pomfrey will pretend not to see him. Harry speaks in a low, scraped voice about a cup-turned portkey, about cold stone and hooded figures, about a cauldron, and a high, terrible laugh. Voldemort, back. Ron feels the name land in his chest like a stone dropped into deep water. He watches Harry's fingers shake as he describes the circle of Death Eaters, the gaps where some did not come, the way one man was called forward and marked again. Harry keeps saying, circle. Ron hears something else. Ring, house, recruitment. When Harry says he called them his faithful Slytherins, the air in Ron's lungs goes thin. He has been planning this, Ron thinks suddenly. Not just the graveyard, the years, the families, the children sorted under green and silver banners, taught certain stories, given certain heroes. Slytherin. The word is heavier now in every corridor. It hangs over breakfast, over the walk down to potions, over the way Hufflepuffs go quiet when a knot of Slytherins passes. In the common room, the emerald light from the lake looks colder. Ron watches his housemates closely. Theodore Knott's eyes are bright, calculating. Pansy Parkinson whispers with Millicent, mouths curved in a way that is not quite fear. Draco Malfoy is the strangest of all. Pale, jumpy, loud in his insistence that Potter is lying. Too loud. Some Slytherins are quietly thrilled. Ron can see it in the way they sit a little straighter when the prophet prints the dark mark, in the way they say the Dark Lord instead of you-know-who. Others are terrified, though they would rather bite their tongues than admit it. Blaise Zabini keeps his essays perfect and his opinions neutral. A few pretend nothing has changed at all, as if denial is just another shield charm. Ron knows better. Everything has changed. For them first. He lies awake one night, counting beds, his dormitory, the year above, the year below. How many fathers once stood in a circle like the one Harry described? How many sons will be expected to step into those empty spaces? The realization comes slow and cold. Slytherin will be the first recruitment pool, the bank of future followers, the place where letters will arrive in the dark, written in careful, anonymous hands. His presence here is no accident now, it is strategy. Dumbledore's eyes confirm it. The conversation happens in the headmaster's office. Late, the castle quiet. Fawkes sleeps on his perch. Ron stands on the same rug where Harry once shouted at this man about secrets and plans and Gringotts and blood inheritance and the right to know everything. Dumbledore looks older than he did then. "Mr. Weasley," he says softly, "I will not ask you to be disloyal to your house, but I must ask you to be attentive within it." Ron swallows. "You want me to spy?" "A very harsh word," Dumbledore replies. "I prefer to notice, to remember, and to tell a trusted ear if you believe a line is being crossed. Later, Sirius says it without softening. Grimmauld Place, a stolen hour through the flue, soot on Ron's sleeves. "You're in the snake pit, kid," Sirius tells him, eyes dark. "If they start circling, I need you to see who moves first." He looks at Harry, she looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. This is bigger than house points now. That night, back in the dungeons, Ron stares up at the low stone ceiling. The lake presses its green light through the windows. In his mind, the stone is open and full of whispers. He imagines a dark mark hanging over the castle, casting its own sick glow through the water. He turns his head, counts breathing, 1, 2, 3, 4. He wonders not if, but which of his roommates will wear it first. The classroom is quiet and full of pink. September 1995, Defence Against the Dark Arts. Dolores Umbridge smiles at them like a toad that has found a warm stone. Lace curtains, kitten plates, the faint smell of sickly perfume. She looks over the room and her eyes pause just for a second on the silver and green ties. Approval, ownership. In Slytherin, the reaction is immediate. Whispers in the common room, smirks at breakfast, a new kind of confidence in the way they walk through the corridors. Here is a teacher who calls them dears and good boys and girls, while docking points from Gryffindor for breathing too loudly. Here is someone who looks at Malfoy and sees not a spoiled child, but a useful ally. Ron watches it unfold from his corner of the sofa, beneath the lake green windows. Detentions for Hufflepuffs who question, essays for Ravenclaws who ask about practical defence, public humiliation for Gryffindors who mention you-know-who, and Slytherin? Extra credit, prefect favouritism, letters home praising their proper attitudes. He has been planning this year as a chance to prove himself, to show that a Weasley in Slytherin can still be decent, still be brave. Instead, he listens to his housemates repeat Umbridge's lines about natural hierarchies and necessary control. The words taste too much like things he has heard in this common room late at night when boys forget to lower their voices. Ron is ambitious. He wants to matter in this magical world, but he also knows what it is to be on the wrong side of a sneer. Pureblood, he may be, but poor, crowded, hand-me-down poor. When Umbridge talks about undesirable elements and Draco's friends snicker in the direction of Muggleborns, something in Ron goes hard and cold. He pushes back, quietly. Questions phrased as if he is only curious. A raised eyebrow when someone quotes the Daily Prophet too eagerly. A muttered, "Funny, that's not what happened," when they discuss Cedric. He knows better than to be open. In Slytherin, open dissent is not brave, it is suicidal. So when Hermione pulls Harry into a hidden room and talks about fighting back, Ron cannot simply walk in beside them. A Slytherin co-founding Dumbledore's army has to move differently. He becomes the shadow at the edge of the plan, the anonymous note that finds its way to a nervous Hufflepuff. The casual remark in the dorm that plants the idea that Umbridge is not as secure as she thinks. He has been planning this without quite admitting it to himself, mapping who sits with whom, who grumbles after class, who flinches when Umbridge's quill comes out. He turns Slytherin gossip into a network, hears about educational decrees before they are posted, passes warnings through Ginny, through a sympathetic Ravenclaw who owes him a favour. The risk is not just detentions. If he is caught, it will not be a week of lines. It will be Malfoy's cold stare, Nott's careful distance, letters home from angry parents who sit on ministry committees and wonder why a Weasley boy is undermining order. In this house, social exile can follow you into adulthood, into Gringotts ledgers and ministry offices. One evening deep in winter, the room of requirement fills with whispers and steaming breath. The DA is meeting. Harry paces. Hermione checks her list. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. Someone is missing. The door opens. A hooded figure slips in late, cloak pulled low, wands lift, just in case. The figure hesitates, then pushes the hood back. Red hair, tired eyes, and beneath the black robes knotted at his throat like a quiet declaration, a Slytherin green tie. Harry looks at him. He looks at her. More than any description could contain moves between the three of them, as the room falls utterly still. The room holds its breath. Ron lets the hood fall fully back, as if he has stepped onto a dueling platform. He has been planning this, not in neat lists like Hermione, but in half-formed arguments muttered into his pillow in the Slytherin dorm, in glances traded with Malfoy when Umbridge's decrees went up, in the way his wand hand twitched every time a friend told him about another detentions with Quill's story. "I brought some people," he says quietly. The door opens again. 3 Slytherins slip in, robes plain, ties green. Not the polished, laughing group that surrounds Draco. The other ones. The ones who sit near the ends of tables and look at their plates when talk turns to blood. A tall girl with ink-stained fingers and a second-hand wand. Half-blood. Mother a muggle nurse. Father a clerk at the bank in Diagon Alley. A stocky boy with immaculate robes and eyes like flint, pure blood from a family that sends him careful, heavy letters every week about expectations and proper associations. A tiny third year, whose name Harry can never remember, who flinches every time someone mentions the dark mark. They stand just inside the room of requirement, backs to the door, as if expecting hexes. The Gryffindors and Hufflepuffs react first. Wands lift. A few chairs scrape back. Someone mutters, "You've got to be joking." Zacharias Smith actually laughs, sharp and ugly. Hermione steps forward before Harry does. "We invited Ron," she says. "Ron invited them. They need to learn to defend themselves as much as anyone." She looks at Harry. He looks at her. A moment of understanding passes between them. They can talk theory about unity all they like, but this is the test. "Wands down," Harry says. His voice is steady, though his heart is not. "We're here to learn defense. That's for the whole magical world, or it's for no one." Training becomes the argument. Ron pairs the tall half-blood girl with a Gryffindor boy who lost an uncle in the First War. "Shield charms," he orders. "Rotate partners every 3 spells." When the boy's first Protego slams her stunner aside, she actually smiles. By the 3rd rotation, they are correcting each other's wand angles. The pure-blood boy ends up opposite a Hufflepuff, whose grandparents fled to France when Voldemort rose. Their first exchange is vicious, sparks, and snarled insults. The second is cleaner. By the 5th, they are breathing hard, circling, saying nothing at all. Trust does not appear in a speech. It appears when Ron steps bodily between Seamus and the stocky Slytherin after a misaimed jinx grazes Ginny's hair. "Enough," Ron snaps. "You want to hex Death Eaters or your classmates?" His eyes are hard. He looks more Slytherin in that moment than he ever has, and somehow more Weasley too. Slowly the room adjusts. Slytherin voices join the chorus on Expelliarmus. Hermione walks the half-blood girl through a complicated shield variant she dug out of an old Peveril text. Neville lends the 3rd year his extra set of dragon hide gloves. Then, one night, the room of requirement shudders. Conversation dies, the walls ripple, as if the castle itself is holding back a breath. A faint, horrible giggle filters through the stone. Umbridge. "Corridor patrol," Hermione whispers. "She's close." The door handle rattles. The room seals itself, but not perfectly. Harry can feel the magic straining. Ron is already moving. He has been planning this too in a different way, mapping Slytherin routes, counting every tapestry that conceals a passage, every shortcut his housemates brag about when they think no one is listening. "Everyone with me now," he hisses. He sprints to the far wall, taps a specific brick pattern with his wand. Stone melts, revealing a narrow, twisting corridor that smells of damp and old secrets. This links to a disused Slytherin access, he says. No portraits, no suits of armour, no witnesses. They pour through, hearts pounding, DA and Slytherins jostling together in the dark. Behind them, the room's door finally creaks open. Umbridge steps into an empty space. Ahead, in the blackness of the passage, something older than any of them stirs, and Ron realizes he is leading them not just away from discovery, but straight toward the next secret the castle has been hiding. Stone under his hands, dust in his throat. The tunnel breathes around them like a living thing. June, 5th year. The secret passage spills them into the night outside Honeydukes, and for one stunned heartbeat Ron just listens to their panting, to the distant crackle of wards, to his own pulse hammering in his ears. He has been planning this, without admitting it even to himself. Every whispered route Slytherins use to dodge patrols, every gap in Filch's rounds, every story older students told about how to slip past Hogsmeade protections when you really, truly should not. Now, he has to do it under a different kind of gaze, because when a Gryffindor goes missing after Umbridge's coup, people assume recklessness. When a Slytherin vanishes, especially the Weasleyan Slytherin, Snape starts counting heads, prefects start checking dormitory doors, Draco starts asking pointed questions in the common room. Ron had to walk out of that dungeon like it was any other evening, homework in hand, muttering about the library. He had to time the moment he doubled back, had to slip past the stone arch when the wall was empty, had to make sure not a single green and silver witness could later say, "Weasley left with Potter." The ministry atrium is too bright, too clean. The lift rattles them down into the Department of Mysteries, and the world narrows to footsteps, whispers, the cold ring of prophecy shelves. Then the Death Eaters arrive, and there is no time left for thinking. Here, Ron's instincts look different. He is not the boy who charges, he is the boy who angles. He drags Neville behind a row of shelves, counts masks, watches wand arcs. He has learned in Slytherin that survival is often about where you stand, who you let see you, how you make an enemy turn their back at the wrong moment. He shoves a spinning rack of glass orbs to crash 3 aisles over, drawing curses away from Harry. He flanks without being asked, cutting across the room to force a masked figure to split attention between him and Hermione. He ducks low, uses fallen stone as cover, calls warnings in short, clipped bursts. At one point, he and Draco end up back to back, just for a breath. Ron hears Malfoy's sharp intake, feels the tension. He looks at her. She looks at him. No. This time it is Harry, wand flashing at the edge of his vision, and the pattern breaks. Pattern interrupt in the middle of terror. A moment of understanding passes between them anyway. Ron knows this is where his house will judge him, if he lives long enough for them to hear about it. He does not see the curse that hits him. Brain-addling, sickly, laughter clawing up his throat as he collapses into the veil room's cold floor. He remembers only fragments afterward, Hermione's hand, Sirius shouting, the archway swallowing light. The story that grows from those fragments is more than any description could contain. In the Slytherin common room, the tale mutates fast. Some insist Ron was coerced, that Potter used a spell, that Weasley's ridiculous loyalty was weaponized. Others claim he went to spy, that he was playing a longer game. No one quite wants to say out loud that a Slytherin might simply have chosen to stand beside Harry because it was right. Gryffindor House tells a different story. To them, Ron is the boy who went anyway, who took curses meant for others, who fought like a strategist instead of a martyr. They look at each other when they say his name now, as if testing the shape of it against their assumptions. The Order, meeting in the dim kitchen of Grimmauld Place, is quieter still. Moody's magical eye twitches. Kingsley's calm voice notes dryly that having a Slytherin fifth-year fight beside Harry complicates certain ministry talking points. If all Slytherins are Death Eaters in waiting, what does it mean that one bled on the same floor as Sirius Black? They do not answer that question, not yet. The Daily Prophet the next morning does not either. But the headline plants a seed in every breakfast hall and sitting room in Wizarding Britain. Attack in the Department of Mysteries. Potter and Weasley, Slytherin fifth year, defy he who must not be named. The office is warm and full of voices. Laughter, the clink of crystal, the low hum of people who already assume they will run the world. September 1996. Slughorn's first little gathering after the train. Ron stands just inside the door, shoulders tight, dress robes hanging a bit long at the wrists. Slughorn is already booming his way across the room, moustache bristling, waistcoat straining. "Ronald Weasley at last. Come in, my boy, come in. Harry's right behind you, is he?" "Excellent, excellent. And a Slytherin too. I do pick them, don't I?" He has been planning this, Ron realizes. Not Ron in particular, maybe, but the type. Old family name, famous best friend. Now with the added curiosity of being the Weasley who sleeps under green hangings and walks down to the dungeons at night. Slughorn steers him like a prized broom, one hand on his shoulder through clusters of students. A tall witch in silver robes, granddaughter of a former minister, a Ravenclaw whose uncle runs a Gringotts European office, a Slytherin seventh year whose family sent a letter of thanks after the Department of Mysteries. Ron catches fragments. Promising. Good head for charms. Pure blood, of course, but very modern. Ron smiles when he remembers, nods when he should. He looks at Harry. She looks at him. Hermione across the room is half listening to Eldred Warple and half counting all the ways this is a soft power network disguised as a party. For Ron, it is something else as well. It is the first time adults with real influence look at him and see more than a hand-me-down robe and a famous boy's shadow. They see a Slytherin who fought Death Eaters and bled in the Ministry, a Weasley who did not flinch in a corridor full of green light. Some evenings, it is intoxicating. Slughorn calls him over to tell a story about the Quidditch World Cup, asks his opinion on ministry policy, introduces him as a very promising young man. Mark my words. Ron laughs, takes another crystallized pineapple, and lets himself imagine what it would be like if this were normal, if doors just opened when he walked toward them. Other nights the shine rubs thin. He notices how Slughorn positions him when certain purebloods arrive. The safe Slytherin, the Weasley who proves you can admire ambition without admiring the Dark Lord. A token, polished and set out on the table. He knows it even as he enjoys the taste of recognition. And always, there is Draco. Draco, who used to fill these rooms with lazy drawl and easy arrogance, now appears rarely, eyes shadowed, shoulders rigid. When he does come, he stands at the edge, not the centre. Slughorn tries once. "My dear boy, you mustn't be a stranger." And Draco's mouth twists. He leaves early. The empty space he used to occupy becomes a dark mirror Ron cannot quite stop looking at. They look at each other in the corridors sometimes, no hexes, no words, just the knowledge that one Slytherin fifth year walked into the Department of Mysteries and came back to Slughorn's parties, while another walked into Voldemort's confidence and came back with blood on his hands. A moment of understanding passes between them, more than any description could contain. After one particularly crowded evening, when the last guest has gone and Harry and Hermione have slipped out, Slughorn claps Ron on the back. "You, my boy, could go far in the Ministry one day, mark my words, with your connections, your balance. They like that sort of thing." Ron walks back to the dungeons alone, the words echoing louder than the footsteps. For the first time, he does not dismiss them as flattery. He realizes unsteadily that he might actually believe it. The common room is quiet and green and watching. Ron sits in the corner armchair, Slughorn's words still echoing, and traces patterns on the armrest with one finger. Ambition, balance, ministry. He has been planning this future in half-formed daydreams for months without admitting it to himself. Imagining offices and letters with his name on them, imagining not being the afterthought, Weasley for once. Across the room, Draco Malfoy slips in through the entrance, soaked cloak, tight shoulders, eyes that flick to every shadow before he walks fully inside. Ron looks up, and something in his stomach goes cold. He has seen this before. Bill, the summer before Egypt. Percy, the year he started vanishing into the Ministry. The same brittle secrecy, the same fear wrapped in importance. He watches Draco over the next weeks the way he once watched Harry on a Quidditch pitch, counting absences. Noting the way Draco's friends fall silent when he approaches, the way he checks his left forearm when he thinks no one is looking, the way he flinches, just slightly, at the word Death Eater in Slughorn's comfortable voice. He has been planning this conversation, choosing a moment when the common room will be nearly empty, rehearsing openings that do not sound like accusations. In the end, it happens in the bathroom off the Slytherin corridor, tiled and echoing. Draco is at the sink, splashing water on his face. Ron steps in, lets the door close. "You're in trouble," Ron says quietly. No preamble, no joke. "I know what it looks like when someone's drowning and pretending they're not." Draco's head snaps up, grey eyes furious. "You don't know anything, Weasley." "I know fear," Ron answers. "I know what it's like when someone older, more powerful, decides what your life is worth. If you need—" "From you?" Draco's laugh is sharp. "Go back to your Gryffindor friends or your little Ministry dreams. This isn't your world." A moment of understanding passes between them, twisted and incomplete. Ron sees the line. Draco would rather burn than admit weakness to a Weasley. Draco sees the line. Ron will not push further, not here, not while walls might listen. The night the dark mark splits the sky open, Ron is not on the tower. He's in the corridors below, wand out, lungs burning, Slytherin versus Slytherin, and no one has written rules for this. A seventh year in his own house colours throws a curse past Ron's ear at Ginny. Ron stuns him without thinking, then has to keep moving. He duels a masked Death Eater whose stance looks horribly like one of the older prefects. He sends a shield between a terrified second year and a hex from a boy he shared a table with at breakfast. Every spell is a choice. Who he protects, who he targets, which future he is making for his house with each flick of his wand. When it is over, when Dumbledore is gone and the tower is a jagged silhouette against the poisoned sky, he hears it in fragments. Snatches from McGonagall, from Snape, from a sobbing Myrtle in the pipes. Draco, ordered to kill. Draco, wand shaking. Draco, unable to say the words. Ron stands in the courtyard, neck craned, staring at the dark mark hanging over the tower like a verdict. Horror settles first. That a boy his age was handed that task. Relief follows, bitter and undeniable, that Draco could not cross that last line. He looks at the mark, he looks at the Slytherin windows. They look at each other across the dark, the future and the past of his house, and Ron understands that whatever he builds in the Ministry, whatever Harry and Hermione change in the wider magical world, Draco's choices will echo through Slytherin just as loudly. He has been planning a path for himself. Now he has to plan for a house that might yet follow Draco Malfoy instead. And somewhere above in the tower's shadow, another choice is already being made. The forest is too quiet. No owls, no distant crack of apparition, only their breathing and the soft clink of the locket against Ron's chest. September without Hogwarts feels wrong in his bones. He should be walking down to the dungeons, pretending not to notice the new banners, the new rules, the Carrows counting heads at the Slytherin table. Instead, he sits in a damp hollow with Harry and Hermione, a stolen tent behind them, a stolen Horcrux in his hand, and a choice that has already burned every bridge behind him. He could have gone back. On parchment, it would have been safer. Slytherin is protected now, whispered about as the house that chose correctly. A pure blood name, a dark mark-friendly dormitory, a head of house who is now headmaster. The perfect cover. Except it is a trap built exactly for boys like him. Ron knows what it would mean to walk through that door, the Carrows asking for names, older Slytherins testing his loyalty with curses instead of jokes. Draco watching him across the common room, weighing every word. One letter home, one wrong glance at a muggle-born first year, and he becomes an informant or a corpse. There is no middle ground. So he does the more radical thing. He runs with the Gryffindors. He has been planning this since the moment the Ministry fell, not in speeches but in quiet, Slytherin ways. Maps folded 3 times, names of safe houses written in a code only he and Hermione understand. A list of relatives they will never visit because Death Eaters will expect them there. Harry thinks in straight lines, in confrontations. Hermione thinks in systems, in laws and wards. Ron thinks in traps. They apparate in zigzags instead of lines. They leave bootprints that lead to rivers and then vanish. Twice, Ron persuades them to send decoy letters through sympathetic order members. Careful, bland notes that suggest they are hiding in places they have already left. It feels paranoid. It is paranoid. That is the point. In the cramped tent, the dynamic shifts. Hermione spreads books and notes. Harry paces, wanting action. Ron sits by the flap, wand in hand, listening. He looks like the guard dog, but inside, he is counting all the ways this can go wrong. His house's reputation hangs over him like another curse. If they are caught, who will the Death Eaters believe turned first? The Slytherin, of course. The locket presses cold against his skin and whispers that they already suspect him. One afternoon, the pattern breaks. They are cutting across a scrubby hillside when the air shivers. Figures appear, rough robes, hungry eyes, snatchers. Not masked, not elegant, but efficient. One of them squints, then grins. Well, look what we've got. The Weasley snake. The words hit harder than any spell. Ron freezes. They know him, not just as a blood traitor, but as the Slytherin who walked away, a prize and a warning all at once. Harry reacts first, wand up, name on his tongue. Hermione's fingers clamp on his sleeve, dragging him sideways as she fires a curse. Ron moves last and fastest, because he has been planning this too, the escape route, the uneven ground, the way one shouted lie might buy them seconds. "Scabia," he calls, voice cracking just enough. "Orders changed. We're to take them to the bank, Gringotts, directly." It is absurd. It is also just plausible enough to make 3 wands hesitate. A moment of understanding passes between them. Harry's shock, Hermione's instant calculation, Ron's desperate gamble. They run. Later, when the sun has gone and the forest takes them back, they sit around a small, carefully banked fire. No tent up yet, no plans spoken aloud. Smoke curls into the dark. Ron stares into the flames. Orange, then red, then the faintest hint of green reflected in the metal at his throat. The locket glints like an eye, Slytherin green, catching every flicker. He looks at her. She looks at him. Hermione's gaze drops to the Horcrux, then back to his face, as if she can see the weight of house and history and suspicion coiled there, with the fragment of soul. They look at each other for a long time. In the firelight, with the forest listening and the locket whispering, Ron Weasley understands that running was only the first decision. The harder ones are still coming, and they will demand every cautious, ambitious, frightened Slytherin instinct he has ever tried to hide. The flames dance, the green light at his throat does not. The forest is full of breath he cannot see. Night presses close around their little camp. The wards hum. The locket lies against Ron's skin, cold as Gringotts stone, heavy as a hand on his throat. He stares into the flames and sees, not wood and ash, but polished oak, green leather, a brass plaque on a door that swings inward when he reaches for it. Senior Undersecretary Ronald Bilious Weasley. He has been planning this in the quiet parts of his mind for years without admitting it. Not that exact title, not that exact office, but something like it. A room that is his. A desk no brother has ever touched. A world where people stand when he walks in. The locket tastes that thought, curls around it like smoke, and feeds it back to him in sharper colours. He looks up, and the vision shifts. The office window becomes a Gryffindor common room, red and gold, firelit and safe. Harry and Hermione on the sofa, heads bent together over a map, laughing at something he cannot hear. Their jumpers are scarlet, their scarves are scarlet. Even the cushions glow with lion colours. Outside the glass in the dark, a boy in Slytherin green stands with rain dripping from his fringe, watching them forget him. The boy is him. The locket makes sure he knows. It whispers without words at first, just pressure, just the sense of a thought that might be his own. You were never really one of them. You know that. Green in a sea of red, snake at a lion's table. You survived anyway, you learned how. Self-preservation, the hat had called it. Ambition. The instincts that made Slytherin cheer when he won at chess, that made older students nod when he cut a clever deal for better practice time. That made professors look twice at the poor Weasley boy who somehow always had a plan. Those same instincts turn inward now, sharpened to a poisonous edge. You could survive this without them. No more camping, no more cold. Find the order, find the ministry. Take the credit you deserve. Let the chosen one chase shadows. When the argument comes to the surface, it is almost a relief. Words instead of whispers. Harry pacing, hair wild, talking about Godric's Hollow and Wandlore and Dumbledore's clues. Hermione biting her lip, trying to map risk and reward. Ron hearing only the reckless Gryffindor rhythm underneath it all. "You don't think," he snaps, voice shaking. "You never have. It's all charge in, hope it works, and everyone else pays the price." Harry rounds on him. "And what? You want to sit in a safe little office and wait for the Ministry to sort it. That's not courage, Ron. That's cowardly Slytherin pragmatism." The word lands like a slap. Slytherin. As if it is an accusation instead of a house. As if the green on his tie has been a warning label all along. They look at each other. She looks at him. Hermione steps between them, eyes bright with tears, but the locket is faster. It twists Harry's face, Hermione's hand on Harry's arm, into confirmation of every fear Ron has ever had. Left out, left behind, not enough. A moment of understanding passes between them, but he is too far inside the whisper to feel it. He disapparates into the dark with a crack that feels like something breaking in his chest. The world folds, then slams open around him. Wet leaves, empty fields, wind clawing at his robes. Behind him, far away, the locket's laughter thins and scatters into the night, almost lost under the sound of his own ragged breathing. Almost. White on black water. A shape that is not moonlight moves between the trees. Ron stands on the riverbank, wand raised, breath ghosting in the cold. The doe steps out of the dark as if the forest has decided to remember something gentle. Silver, translucent, impossibly calm. It looks at him. Every Slytherin instinct he owns flares at once. Unknown magic, impossible Patronus, lure, in the middle of nowhere. He has been planning this exile as punishment, as proof, walking from hedgerow to hedgerow, with nothing but a bag of food, and too much time to think. And now the war itself seems to have sent him a beautiful, obvious trap. He does not move. The doe does. It turns, walks away, pauses, glances back. An invitation, or bait. He can hear his housemates in his head, the careful ones, the cruel ones. You don't follow unknown magic into the dark. You send someone else. You wait, you watch, you survive. That is how Slytherins win. But there is another voice under that, smaller, older. Harry's laugh over a chessboard, Hermione's hand on his wrist in first year, pulling him toward the troll. His mother's letter that first Christmas, the way she wrote his name and Harry's together, as if it was obvious they came as a set. If this is a trap for them and he walks away, what does that make him? He follows. The forest closes around him. Snow roots. The silver glow just ahead. The doe leads him to a pool black as old ink, ice crusted at the edges, steam lifting faintly where the water is not yet frozen. At the bottom, something gleams. A sword. His breath catches, Gryffindor's blade, waiting in a place no Gryffindor would ever trust. Every alarm in him screams now, cursed water, cursed metal, cursed timing. He could go back to the tent, wake Harry, plan it properly. That would be the Slytherin thing to do, the clever thing. He strips off the locket instead. The near drowning is not poetic, it is cold, violent, stupid. Ice claws at his skin, the Horcrux drags at his throat, panic shreds every plan he thought he had. When Harry hauls him out, coughing and shaking, the world is reduced to air and pain, and the locket's furious, whispering beat against the snow. Then it opens. The vision that spills out is worse this time. Not just Hermione and Harry, not just their mouths, shaping all his old fears. The smoke figures circle him like snakes, eyes green and merciless. Perfect Slytherin traitor, they hiss. Always knew you would be. Ambitious enough to resent him, weak enough to run, clever enough to stab him in the back when it matters. It shows him in green and silver standing at Voldemort's side. It shows him at the Ministry, quill in hand, signing laws that grind his father's world into dust. It shows him walking away from Harry over and over until that walk is not shame but habit. He looks at the images, he looks at Harry, solid and real beside him, wand still out, not moving. On 3, Harry says quietly. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them, more than any description could contain. Ron steps forward, he lifts the sword, the Horcrux screams, offers him every dark version of himself, every excuse. He brings the blade down anyway. When metal bites metal and the locket explodes, he is not just killing jealousy. He is killing the Slytherin that would have owned him, the one that makes survival an altar and loyalty a joke. Later, when he can breathe again and the forest has stopped spinning, Harry asks, "Why did you come back?" Ron looks at the broken locket, at the sword, at his own shaking hands. "Because leaving showed me what kind of Slytherin I'm not," he says. "I'm not a coward, I'm not a follower, I'm not going to be someone else's weapon. I'm going to be a strategist for the light, for you, for all of us." Harry studies him for a long moment, then nods once. "So do I." They walk back toward the tent side by side. Ron's green scarf is wrapped tight around his neck, the wool damp, the colour dark against the snow. It looks different now. Not a brand someone else burned into his life, but a banner he has chosen to carry. Behind them, in the trampled snow by the shattered locket, something else stirs, listening. The corridors are wrong, stone, torches, portraits, all the same and not. There are carrows at every junction, chains on the banisters, new notice boards thick with rules. When they step back into Hogwarts, it feels less like a school and more like a garrison someone has emptied of children and filled with fear. Ron feels it most when he looks toward the dungeons. The path down to Slytherin is blocked by a heavy, iron-banded door and 2 seventh-year prefects in emerald armbands. Not his. New ones. Carrow approved. Their eyes flick to his green scarf and then away, as if the colour itself might be contagious. Slytherin is under guard, under suspicion, under siege from both sides. The Carrows watch them for disloyalty. The rest of the school watches them for treachery. It would be easy, Ron thinks, for the house to snap exactly the way Voldemort wants. He has been planning this since the tent, since the snow and the locket and the decision to come back. Now the plans shift, refine, take on stone and torchlight and faces. He starts with what he knows. People. Millicent Bulstrode, whose brother disappeared after refusing the mark. Vasey, who hates the Carrows more than he ever hated Gryffindor, because Quidditch is gone and his nose still hasn't healed from detention. Daphne Greengrass, all pure-blood poise and quiet calculations, who understands leverage the way Hermione understands runes. Which Slytherins might flip if given a way to look brave, without looking suicidal? Which will inform the moment they smell weakness? He walks the corridors like he once walked the aisles at Gringotts, counting doors instead of columns, memorizing which suits of armour have gaps behind them, which tapestries breathe cold air. The house has always had secret passages. He just never wrote them down. Now he does. Chalk marks under stair treads, a folded scrap tucked into Neville's hand, another into Ginny's. Hermione watches him draw a quick map on the back of an old letter, her eyes moving fast. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them. This is what Slytherin was always for. Neville's resistance is raw courage and stubborn roots, students pulled from every house who have learned to sleep in the room of requirement and wake to bruises. The DA is memory and promise, a name more than an organisation now, but names still matter. In a magical world, Ron becomes the thing between them and the snakes in the walls. He meets Theo Knott in the shadow of a gargoyle, trading passwords and threats in equal measure. He stands in the common room he once called home and tells a hushed circle of green and silver that if they are tired of being treated like future Death Eaters, this is their chance to prove everyone wrong. Not everyone listens. Some Gryffindors still flinch when he walks in, their eyes catching on his scarf before his face. Some Slytherins mutter traitor twice over, Weasley blood, and Slytherin colours wasted on Potter's side. The pattern breaks one night when Seamus snaps, voice sharp, asking why they should trust any Slytherin at all. Ron does not shout back. He talks about Slughorn and Regulus Black, and the fact that Voldemort keeps killing his own. He talks until the room is quiet. By the time the first alarms ring, the room of requirement has changed again. Tonight, it is a war room. Tables dragged together, candles burned low. Maps of Hogwarts spread out, ink lines crisscrossing staircases and hidden doors, names written in 3 colours, DA, neutral, risk. Ron stands over them, wand tapping roots, voice low and certain as he assigns tasks. He looks nothing like the boy who once got lost on the way to potions. He looks like a Slytherin general in a student rebellion, every inch of him angled toward the coming battle, fighting not for a banner, but for the only home he has ever chosen. And somewhere, under the castle, behind that iron-banded door, Slytherin House waits to see which side of itself will answer, when the war finally walks through the walls. The dungeons are full of smoke and echoes. Stone sweats in the heat of distant curses. The floor shivers with each impact from above. Dust falls in thin, patient lines. This is the moment from the cold open, but now the world has walked all the way to meet it. Ron stands in the corridor outside the Slytherin common room, wand loose at his side, shoulders squared. Not flanked by Gryffindors, not backed by professors. Behind him, in the deeper shadows, are students pressed close together. Hufflepuff yellow, Ravenclaw blue, Gryffindor red and green. Younger Slytherins, first and second years who did not walk out when their parents sent letters demanding they leave. Children who looked at the war, then at Ron Weasley, and decided to stay in the castle with the traitor Snake. He has been planning this, in his own clumsy, stubborn way. Every late-night patrol with prefects, every whispered conversation with Zabini about who is likely to fold, every carefully casual question to Slughorn about emergency wards and liability. He looks like a boy holding a line, but underneath that, he looks like someone who has been counting exits and names for years. The Death Eaters round the corner in a black wave, masks, robes, the smell of burned air clinging to them. One of them laughs when he sees who stands there. "Move aside, boy." Ron does not. He lifts his wand, but he does not fire. Not yet. "Funny thing," he says, voice too loud in the stone corridor. "This stretch of dungeon? Technically under joint jurisdiction of Hogwarts and the Board of Governors. I checked the charter in the bank copy at Gringotts. Any curse you throw in here that hits a minor makes you personally liable for blood compensation. Ancient law. Pre-war." They hesitate. Just a breath. But in war, a breath is a door. He starts talking. Fast, relentless, like he is afraid to stop. He names families. Knows who is on which committee, who has which scandal buried in which vault file. He mentions a cousin's quiet half-blood marriage, a sister's unregistered business with goblins, a son who never reported his failed OWLs. Each detail is a small, sharp knife. "You kill me," he says. "You don't just make a martyr. You trigger 3 inheritance disputes and a Gringotts audit. You know what goblins do when they smell fraud?" A moment of understanding passes between them. Not agreement, recognition. They look at each other, masked and unmasked, and calculate. Behind him, someone moves. A small shape steps out of the cluster of students. Slytherin tie, pale face, 3rd year maybe. Ron knows him. Cassius Warrington's little brother, the one who always sat closest to the door. The boy walks up until he stands at Ron's elbow. His hand is shaking, but his wand is out. "My father is with them," he says quietly, eyes on the Death Eaters. "He sent for me." I wrote back. I said no. He looks at Ron. She looks at him. It is not elegant, not a speech for history, but it is more than any description could contain. "This is my house too," the boy says. "You want us, you go through us." The corridor changes. Fear has been the mortar of Slytherin unity for decades. Now, there is a crack running straight through it, lit from within by something stubborn and new. The leading Death Eater shifts his stance. He could push. He could test how far this fragile defiance will bend before it breaks. But every second he spends here is a second lost upstairs, where Harry and Hermione are turning the Great Hall into a ritual circle of wards and oaths. He snarls a command. The black wave splits, flowing toward a side passage, diverting around the bottleneck Ron has made of his own body and name. Not a victory song, a grudging retreat. Ron does not cheer. He just exhales once, like he has been holding his breath since 1st year. Behind him, the students start to move, guided toward safer rooms, toward the next layer of defense. In this moment, in a damp stone corridor under a burning castle, Slytherin finally produces a counterexample so solid it might as well be carved into the walls. A boy who uses every serpent trick he has learned to keep children alive, and in doing so, quietly rewrites what his house is allowed to be. The Great Hall is too bright. Candles still float, but their light falls on broken benches, on stretchers lined in rows, on sheets that are mercifully still, and sheets that are not. Smoke clings to the rafters. The smell of potions and blood and stone dust hangs heavy, as if the castle is holding its breath with them. Ron stands near the end of the Slytherin table. The green banner above is scorched, one corner hanging by a single thread. His tie is crooked, still stained where a curse grazed his throat. Around him, Slytherin students huddle in small, stunned knots. Some cry, some stare. All of them feel the way the room looks at them. Parents pour in through the doors. He watches a witch in healer green drop to her knees beside a Ravenclaw boy, watches a wizard in a soot-streaked cloak pull his daughter into his arms and not let go. Then the first shout comes, sharp as a spell. "Where were the snakes when my son died?" The word snakes lands like a slap. Heads turn, eyes narrow. There is grief in the room, and under it, something older. Years of whispers about dark families, years of knowing which table wore green and which names sat there. The war has only confirmed what people thought they already knew. A man near the staff table points at the Slytherins, his hand shaking. They should never have been here. Disband the house, throw them out before they grow up like their parents. He is not alone. A witch in plum robes, a ministry official Ron dimly recognizes from the World Cup, adds, We cannot risk another generation. Close their common room. No more Slytherin. Even one or two teachers look tempted, worn down by funerals and betrayal. Ron feels the words hit his chest. Disband the house. Throw them out. He has been planning this moment without knowing it every time someone flinched at his tie, every time a cousin made a joke at Christmas about snakes at the table. He looks at Harry. She looks at him. Hermione's eyes are already bright with calculation and anger. Before he can think better of it, he steps forward out into the open space between the benches. Leave the kids alone. His voice carries farther than he expects. The hall quiets in uneven ripples. You want to blame someone, you've got a long list. Start with Voldemort. Start with the Death Eaters. Start with the ministry that let him come back. But you don't start with them. He jerks his head toward the Slytherin table. They're students, same as we were. A murmur rises. Someone snaps, "Easy for you to say, boy, you're a—" The speaker stops, finally seeing the tie, the green, the serpent. Ron does not look away. I'm Ron Weasley. My brother died tonight on this floor. My mum is over there and I don't even know how to walk to her yet. I grew up being told Slytherin was where the bad ones went. I believed it. The hat put me here anyway. He swallows. If you punish them for their house, you're saying I should have been thrown out first year. You're saying Fred should have had to mourn me from across a courtroom. Harry moves to stand at his side, robes torn, lightning scar stark against ash-pale skin. He's right, Harry says, and the room listens because the boy who ended the war is speaking. We didn't win so we could start sorting people into acceptable victims and future criminals. Half the Death Eaters weren't Slytherin. Some of the bravest people I know were. Hermione steps up on Ron's other side, shoulders squared. We know everything about blood inheritance now, she says, voice precise, almost cold. We know which families funded which laws, which vaults at Gringotts paid for which elections. If you want justice, we can help you trace it. But houses are not bloodlines. They're choices, year after year, in a castle full of children. Professor McGonagall rises from the staff table. Lines of exhaustion bracket her mouth, but her eyes are clear. Mr. Weasley speaks for me, she says. Slytherin House will not be disbanded on a wave of grief. There is a rustle of silk. Slughorn hauls himself upright, face blotchy, eyes wet. I have taught monsters and martyrs both, he says, often in the same child. If we close Slytherin, we drive the ambitious into the shadows and pretend we do not know where they went. They look at each other. A moment of understanding passes between them. A fragile coalition formed in the open space of the hall, students in torn uniforms, a headmistress who has outlived too many wars, a head of house who has finally chosen a side. The argument does not end quickly. Voices rise, fall, circle back. But by dawn, a shape emerges. Slytherin will remain. Its entrance will be moved, its traditions audited, its prefects and head of house placed under new oversight. No more secret blood purity oaths, no more looking away. Ron listens as they talk about mentorship programs, about pairing Slytherins with Muggle-borns, about new oaths to the school itself instead of to old families. It is not perfect, it is not painless, but it is something. As the first grey light touches the windows, a final question hangs unspoken in the air, heavier than any decree. If Slytherin is allowed to survive, who will define what it becomes next? The office is quiet and full of ticking. Quills, enchanted clocks, the soft click of wards resetting along the doorframe. 10 years after the war, Ron Weasley sits at a plain ministry desk with a stack of reports, a cold cup of tea, and a file marked in red. Suspected Death Eater financing, Gringotts transfers attached. He has been planning this operation for months, following the money where the names refused to appear, mapping shell companies, listening more than he talks. In another world he might have hated this kind of work. In this world, in this life, it fits. The path here was not simple. After the battle, Harry had looked at him across a ruined Hogwarts corridor and said, quietly, "Aura office?" Ron had heard the hesitation under the word. Slytherin, traitor, risk. He looks at her. She looks at him. Hermione's eyes had been measuring, worried, proud. A moment of understanding passes between them. Ron says yes. Training is brutal. Duelling, procedure, legal codes for the new, fairer statutes. Hermione and the others drag through the Wizengamot. Some auras never quite stop watching the green on his house badge. A few mutter about snakes in the nest. Others, the ones who spent the war in the field, learn quickly that a Slytherin who understands how dark networks think is an asset they cannot afford to waste. He goes undercover first in Nocturne, then in a string of private clubs that pretend to be about heritage and tradition. He knows the language. He knows exactly how a boy with hand-me-down robes and too much resentment can be turned. He lets them underestimate him, the freckled Weasley with the wrong house colours and the right last name. And then he walks them step by step into carefully laid traps. He has been planning this too. There is an irony to it that never quite stops stinging. A Slytherin Weasley, enforcing laws that make blood prejudice a prosecutable crime, dismantling the last safe havens for people who once would have called him brother-in-house. When he stands in court and gives evidence, the green of his school scarf against the sober black of his aura robes, he becomes a kind of living argument. Slytherin is not the problem. Choice is. The pattern interrupt comes in his 5th year on the job, when Kingsley asks him to take on something that is not a raid, not a stakeout, not a file. Mentoring, the minister says. Slytherin recruits. We need someone who speaks their language. Ron almost laughs. Then he thinks of first years under the hat, of letters home that will never mention the word Slytherin, because parents are afraid. He thinks of the boys he arrested in that last club, barely older than Hogwarts students. So he meets them, one by one. A sharp-eyed half-blood who quotes old laws. A muggle-born who looks like she's waiting to be expelled from the world at any moment. A pure-blood heir who flinches when anyone says Voldemort's name. Ron tells them everything he wishes someone had told him, that ambition is a tool, not a leash, that loyalty is not the same as obedience, that they are allowed to walk away. By the time the sun sets on most days, his office has seen arguments, tears, oaths, sworn over new regulations that bind auras to the law instead of to families. On one wall hangs his ministry badge. Next to it, carefully charmed against dust, a green and silver scarf a little frayed at the ends, not hidden, not displayed as a trophy, simply there. He looks at the two emblems before every shift. They look at each other. More than any description could contain, that narrow strip of wool beside the polished metal says what he has spent his whole career trying to prove. He is not a Slytherin despite being an aura, or an aura despite being Slytherin. He is both at once, and because of that, the world he is helping build might, finally, be different. Outside his door, footsteps approach, bringing the next case, the next recruit, the next test of what Slytherin will mean now. The office is dark when he leaves it. The world outside is not. By the time Ron walks out of the aura corridor and into the main ministry atrium, the chandeliers are blazing and the air is full of voices, parchment, the low hum of magical mechanisms counting votes. On the far side of the hall, Hermione is already on the dais, a stack of neatly ordered folders in front of her, her hair pulled back, her expression set in that particular relentless calm that means she has been planning this for a very long time. She looks down, finds him in the crowd without searching. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them, quiet and practiced. They have done this dance through more committees and crises than either of them can easily count. Hermione Granger Weasley, Deputy Head of Magical Law Revision, speaks in clauses and subclauses, but underneath the language is the same thing that drove her at 11. The belief that rules can be rewritten, that the letter of the law can be bent toward justice if you know everything it hides. Ron Weasley, senior aura and unofficial liaison to the parts of Slytherin that never quite came in from the cold, works in the spaces between those letters, in the pauses, in the back rooms where no quills record who promised what. Their differences, once a source of slammed doors and long silences, have become tools. Hermione drafts a house-agnostic scholarship program for Muggle-borns and poor purebloods alike, pegged to ability and need, not colours on a tie. Ron reads it, then quietly marks the points where old families will dig in, where Slytherin alumni will mutter about precedent and pride. He does not soften her ideals. He builds escape hatches around them. He has been planning this too, a series of private dinners, carefully chosen invitations, one retired Slytherin head of house here, one influential Gringotts account manager there. He walks into drawing rooms where his aura badge is resented and his house ring is respected, and he talks about scholarships that will keep angry, talented children from being snapped up by the next Dark Lord. About how blood inheritance means little if the world your heirs inherit is burning. The anti-discrimination bill that finally passes does not look exactly like Hermione's first draft. It is stronger in some places, narrower in others, laced with clauses Ron insisted on because he knows where enforcement will fail if the words are too pure for the people meant to obey them. The new Hogwarts Governance Charter, student representation on the board, external oversight of discipline, explicit protections for inter-house study groups, only exists because Ron can still send a letter to certain Slytherins and have it answered. At home, the theory hurts more. One late night, the kitchen is a battlefield of cold tea, open files, and fraying tempers. Hermione's voice is low but shaking as she points to a compromise clause that delays full penalties for blood status discrimination. This crosses a line, Ron. If we say it's wrong, we can't then write in 3 years of looking away. Ron's jaw is tight, his hands are ink-stained, tired. If we don't get them to sign anything, he says, people keep dying while we argue. Imperfect deals save lives now. Perfect ones save reputations. They look at each other. The silence is long, full of everything they have seen. Then Hermione exhales, circles a paragraph and says, "We review in 1 year. Non-negotiable." He nods, the line shifts, but it is not erased. Months later, they stand side by side on the lawn at Hogwarts, watching first years in mingled scarves chase enchanted lanterns. A Slytherin girl and a Gryffindor boy share notes under a tree, heads bent together. Over by the lake, green and red and blue and yellow are a scattered pattern, not 4 separate camps. Ron's hand finds Hermione's. The castle looks back at them, ancient and altered, more than any description could contain. Is this enough? Hermione wonders. Not yet, Ron thinks, but it is more than they were given. And tomorrow there will be another law, another compromise, Another chance to push the line again. The hall is quiet enough to hear the banners breathe. Then the new rules arrive like a storm. By Ron's third year, Hogwarts does not look the same on parchment. The Board of Governors, prodded by Harry's legal letters and Hermione's research, approves a trial of rotating heads of house. Not every year. No one will stomach that. But every 5. A review. A vote, a chance to move a professor whose blind spots have become dangerous. It is written in careful ink. No house is a fiefdom. No child belongs to a single adult's worldview forever. Mandatory mixed-house projects follow. At first, they are small, a joint arithmancy assignment, a history of magic debate team where a Slytherin must argue from a Muggle-born perspective, and a Gryffindor must defend a pure-blood law without sneering. Then they grow, cross-house patrols, paired dueling brackets. A defence curriculum that includes case studies titled When Cunning Saves Lives, When Bravery Gets People Killed. He has been planning this with Hermione for months, combing through old syllabi, asking quietly vicious questions. Why do we teach tactics only as anecdotes? Why is there no formal ethics course in a school that hands wands to 11-year-olds? By 5th year, there is magical ethics and responsibility, compulsory for all OWL students. They read about Grindelwald, about goblin rebellions, about the quiet corruption of the ministry. They read, uncomfortably, about Dumbledore. Inside Slytherin, the change is slower, more dangerous. Slughorn returns as head after Snape's resignation, all velvet voice and collector's eye. Ron walks with him along the damp corridor to the common room entrance, listening. Slughorn loves talent. Ron knows how to make that love-do work. No more midnight hexing gauntlets for first years. No more tradition of cursing the last one through the portrait. Instead, Slughorn's little parties are formalized into a mentorship ladder. Older Slytherins are assigned juniors, with written expectations, tutoring hours, introductions, help navigating the world beyond school. Cunning is redirected from cruelty to networking, from hazing to quiet sponsorship. When Slughorn retires, the rotating policy brings in a younger witch, half-blood, former cursebreaker, who looks at the green-lit room and says, "This could be a war room for peace." She and Ron design joint events with Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw. Puzzle hunts, ward-breaking exercises, negotiation simulations where victory comes from reading the room, not dominating it. The Slytherin Common Room is opened 3 weekends a year for these games. Other houses walk in, stare at the windows that look into the lake, and realize the snakes have been living in a different kind of pressure all along. Testimonies begin to spread, quiet as past notes. A girl with dark plaits and a French accent tells a nervous first year, "I chose Slytherin because of Weasley. My father is in Azkaban, I needed to know I was not him." A boy whose grandparents marched under the dark mark says, "Ron taught me contracts. I wrote my own inheritance clause. I will not fund what they funded." They look at each other, these younger Slytherins, in the library, in the bank at Gringotts when they go to sign their vault papers, and they know blood inheritance is not destiny. Ron's story is proof. He walked out of the shadow of a pure-blood dynasty and into something else. Years later, the Sorting Hat hovers over a trembling Muggle-born girl. "Slytherin," it whispers, and she flinches. Then she hears the applause. Ron is in the stands, older, scarred, wearing deep green robes with a tiny silver lion stitched at the cuff. He is on his feet, hands raised, cheering her like a chaser who just scored. She looks up. He looks back. A moment of understanding passes between them, and then, from the staff table, someone stands who should not be there at all. It should be McGonagall. It is not. September again. Candles floating, ghosts drifting, the whole hall holding its breath as the Sorting Hat finishes its last song. At the staff table, where a stern Transfiguration professor ought to be, a man in deep green robes with Weasley hair, shot through with silver stands instead, hands braced on the table, watching the first year's walk. Ron Weasley, head of Slytherin House. He has been planning this moment for years, though he would never say it that way. The quiet visits to primary schools, the letters to Muggle-born families written in his own uneven hand, explaining that Slytherin is not what they think. The way he walks the line between memory and change, carrying war scars and a Slytherin ring that still looks strange on his finger. On the stool, Albus Potter grips the edges so tightly his knuckles go white. The hat drops over his eyes, the hall blurs. In canon, this is where the fear would spike. Not Slytherin, not Slytherin. Here, something else presses in. His mother's stories of courage, his father's stories of choice, and his uncle's stories of a dungeon common room that became a battlefield, and then a bridge. Slytherin, the hat murmurs, tasting his uncertainty, not a punishment, a possibility. When the shout comes, when the green and silver banner flares above his head, the hall does not gasp. It exhales. At the Slytherin table, Scorpius Malfoy half rises in surprise, pale hair catching the candlelight, then grins and claps so hard his palms sting. Pattern interrupt. No one boos. A Hufflepuff third-year whoops. A Ravenclaw waves. Later, in a side corridor that smells of stone and polish, the panic finally hits. Albus leans against the wall, eyes bright, words tumbling. What if I am wrong for them? What if I do not know how to be what they expect? Ron finds him there. He looks at the boy. The boy looks at him. For a heartbeat, the corridor is the Hogwarts Express again, and an 11-year-old with second-hand robes is hearing Slytherin for the first time. I'm going to tell you what no one told me, Ron says quietly. This house will try to make you think you have to be the sharpest, the coldest, the most. You don't. You only have to be yourself on purpose. Ambition just means choosing who you become, instead of letting the world decide. Albus swallows. And if I make the wrong choice? Then you make another one, Ron answers. Every day, if you have to. That's the bit the hat doesn't explain. A moment of understanding passes between them. At the Slytherin table that night, Weasley red and Malfoy blonde sit side by side, not as a miracle, but as something that has been slowly, stubbornly built. Scorpius is already outlining Quidditch strategies, arguing that a Slytherin seeker with a Potter name will terrify every keeper in Britain. Albus fires back about chaser formations he learned from Aunt Ginny. No one mentions blood status. Someone passes the potatoes. Across the hall, inter-house clusters are normal now. A Gryffindor scarf looped around a Slytherin neck. A Hufflepuff laughing with two Ravenclaws over a shared textbook. The stories of the DA are no longer whispered like rebellion. They are taught in History of Magic as an example of what happens when lines blur and students refuse to let the bank of old grudges dictate their futures. He looks at her. She looks at him. From the Ravenclaw table, Rose Weasley catches her father's eye where he stands at the staff table, and Hermione's where she sits beside him. They look at each other, 3 points in a triangle of memory and choice, and know they have done something that may be more than any description could contain. The camera pulls back. House banners ripple. Robes of every colour mingle in the aisles as students stand, walk, trade seats. The sharp borders of the tables are still there, but the colours bleed at the edges, green beside red, beside blue, beside yellow, until the great hall looks less like 4 separate worlds and more like one changing, complicated, stubbornly hopeful one. Somewhere above them the old hat watches and quietly rewrites its songs. The hall is bright and loud and almost ordinary. But underneath, something essential has shifted. The Golden Trio, as stories like to call them, does not click into place on that first train ride, or over a shared mountain troll, or even in the quiet after the chessboard. Instead, their closeness arrives late, limping and suspicious, with bandaged pride and half-healed misunderstandings. Harry looks at the Slytherin table and knows his first real friend is sitting with his supposed enemies. Hermione looks at the same table and remembers every cutting comment Ron made when he thought she was just another bossy Gryffindor. They still find each other, just not cleanly. There are more slammed doors, more sharp words, more nights where Harry walks the corridors alone, wondering if loyalty can survive house colours. The troll is handled by professors. The chamber crisis is slower to reveal itself because the 3 of them are not yet moving as one organism, finishing each other's thoughts. The friendship we remember from canon exists, but in this world it is something fought for, not gifted. Yet that delay buys them other things. A Slytherin Ron forces the narrative to admit what was always true. A house built on ambition and cunning was never simply evil, just dangerously efficient at getting what it wants. When Ron brings a Hufflepuff Quidditch reserve into a Slytherin strategy meeting, when he quietly passes a Ravenclaw's research on blood inheritance rituals to Hermione, the lines blur. Cross-house alliances happen earlier, not as a desperate wartime measure, but as a habit. By 5th year, the resistance Harry and Hermione build is less a club of brave Gryffindors and more a web of students who know how the bank works, how the ministry thinks, how pure blood families trade favours in letters no one else ever sees. Ron pays for that. He has been planning this performance since the hat shouted Slytherin, practicing 2 smiles in the mirror, 2 versions of every sentence. With Draco, he is dry and sharp, the boy who can joke about blood without ever quite endorsing it. With Harry and Hermione, he is the child from the burrow who still flinches at the word mudblood. He lives between worlds, never fully at rest in either. Loneliness becomes a constant background noise like the crackle of the common room fire. He looks at her, she looks at him. Hermione sees the cost first. The way Ron hesitates before every truth, weighing whether he is speaking as a friend or as a symbol. Because that is what he becomes, the Weasley in green, the proof that Slytherin can change. Professors watch him for signs of corruption or redemption. Younger students whisper his name like a test case. He stops being just a boy who loves chess and sandwiches and becomes an argument walking through the corridors. Harry and Hermione are altered by that pressure too. Harry cannot afford the comfort of simple enemies. The boy who betrayed him over a Quidditch slight is also the boy risking his standing in Slytherin to pass information about cursed objects and quiet meetings. Hermione, who once sorted the world into right and wrong as neatly as books on a shelf, has to admit that bravery without strategy is a luxury, and cunning without courage is a disaster. In this world, she studies warding and politics with the same intensity, and when she looks at the green and silver crest, she sees potential allies instead of a warning sign. A moment of understanding passes between them the first time they plan a mission that depends on Ron lying convincingly to his own housemates. Bravery and cunning, they realize, are not opposite virtues. They are complementary tools, dangerous only when severed from each other. So is this Ron happier? His victories are larger, his influence broader, his role in reshaping the magical world more than any description could contain. But his childhood is thinner, stretched over too many masks. Perhaps the better question is the one that lingers as the war ends and the houses begin to heal. Have we built a story where his suffering feels necessary because it makes the world turn more neatly? And what does that say about the kinds of heroes we are most eager to celebrate? The chamber is open and full of whispers. Not the chamber, not yet, but a smaller one. A dusty classroom, a wardrobe, a line of students waiting their turn to look their worst fear in the face. 3rd year. The boggart steps toward Ron, twists, swells, and there it is. Not a spider, not even Voldemort, but Harry and Hermione turning away, choosing someone else. In canon, it plays as almost comic, a boy afraid of being second best. Under Slytherin light, it looks different. The fear of abandonment, of being outmaneuvered, is exactly the pressure point a house built on hierarchy and power would press, and exactly the wound a Slytherin Ron would spend years trying to armor. He has been planning this, the hat might think, when it brushes that restless, hungry place in him. The boy who studies Chudley Cannon's scores, who memorizes chocolate frog cards, who plays wizard chess with a clarity that borders on ruthless. 1st year, he does not just move pieces, he sacrifices them. He walks his knight forward knowing it will fall because the pattern demands it. That is not only bravery, that is the willingness to trade today's comfort for tomorrow's victory. It is ambition, strategy, long sight. Canon keeps telling us Slytherin can look like this. Regulus Black, who walks into Voldemort's circle and then walks back out alone, leaving only a note in a cave. Horace Slughorn, hoarding talented students like treasures in his office, terrified of his own past, but still able to choose the right side when it matters. Neither of them are simple villains, both are men who bend toward redemption through fear, pride, and finally conscience. Ron's arc, jealousy, flight, return, already traces that same crooked line. Rowling has said the Sorting Hat weighs preference, but it also weighs potential, it argues, it hesitates. With Harry, it almost overrides his choice. With Hermione, it almost names Ravenclaw. It is not hard to imagine the hat settling on Ron's head, hearing that fierce, aching wish to stand out at last, and answering it in the most dangerous way possible. Slytherin, then. Let us see what you do when the world finally looks back. Now, imagine specific scenes bending around that choice. A Quidditch match where green and red blur past each other, and Ron, in Slytherin robes, tracks Harry's every move with a keeper's eye and a friend's complicated loyalty. DA meetings where he stands at the edge of the crowd, half bridge and half barrier. The Slytherins who slip in watching him first to know how far it is safe to trust. The Horcrux hunt with a locket whispering, not only you are nothing, but they will never truly forgive the snake on your chest. Pattern interrupt. What if the Weasley who walks into the ministry as an Auror candidate is not proof that Gryffindors win, but proof that Slytherin is a spectrum rather than a sentence? They look at each other across the rebuilt Great Hall, green banners beside red, silver beside gold, and a moment of understanding passes between them. The story was never meant to be a simple map of good and evil houses. Seen this way, Ron in Slytherin does not break canon. It reveals what was already there and invites us to reread every corridor, every argument, every quiet apology, as part of a larger, older work of healing the house that taught the magical world how to be afraid of itself. So, we come back to him. The boy on the platform with the smudged nose and the hand-me-down trunk. A wand that is not quite new, a jumper that has seen at least 2 brothers before him, a pocket full of crumbs and jokes, and the quiet, gnawing fear that he will never be first in anything. He walks on to the train thinking he knows exactly who he is, Gryffindor material, through and through, because every Weasley is. The hat touches his head and finds something else, a coil of hunger. A mind that has been planning this in small, childish ways for years, counting every slight, every moment of being overlooked, turning them into fuel. Ambition, yes, but not for titles or vaults at Gringotts. Ambition to matter. To be the one who makes the winning move when the whole board is on fire. The hat whispers Slytherin and the world tilts. From there, his story moves in 3 sharp images. The boy in hand-me-downs at the Slytherin table, green light catching the frayed edge of his sleeve as he laughs a little too loudly at Draco's joke, and then goes quiet when Draco mocks Molly's second-hand books. The snake in the lion's den, standing in the middle of the common room as his housemates jeer at Harry's latest front-page disaster, and saying calmly that maybe they should read the whole article. The strategist in the war room, years later, bent over a map of Hogwarts with Harry and Hermione, moving pieces not by bloodline, but by who will stand where it matters. By now we know the most dangerous Slytherin to Voldemort was never Draco, never even Snape. It is the Weasley who refuses to abandon either side of himself. He looks at the pure blood doctrine and feels the old sting of being poor, almost persuaded by the promise that his family could finally be respected. He looks at Harry, at Hermione with ink on her fingers and a muggle pen behind her ear, and chooses them instead. He looks at her. She looks at him. A moment of understanding passes between them that no prophecy could have written. When we revisit the cold open, the boy in green standing between 2 worlds, the corridor thick with banners and history, it reads differently now. Then, he seemed like a contradiction the castle would spit out. Now, he is an answer it did not know it was asking for. House as tool, not identity. Choice over destiny, repeated in 100 small, stubborn decisions. Which table to sit at, which joke not to laugh at, which friend not to leave. In the final quiet after the war, his room holds an inventory of everything he has survived. A chipped chess knight, a broken wand tip, a letter from McGonagall on new house unity bylaws, his notes in the margin. And on the chair by his bed, 2 pieces of cloth, a Slytherin tie, green darkened and softened by years of use, and a Gryffindor scarf, threads pulled, one end scorched, both worn, both kept, both chosen. He has been planning this without knowing it since the moment the hat touched his head. The question now is what he plans next, and who in this rebuilt world is wise enough to see what it means when the deadliest Slytherin still wears Weasley red. The great hall is quiet and full of ghosts, not the transparent kind, the other kind, choices that almost happened, houses that almost took you, roads that bent 1 inch and could have led to a different world entirely. Ron sits at the edge of the Slytherin table in your mind, fingers on that worn green tie, eyes on the scarlet scarf. He has been planning this without knowing it, but now the question slips away from him and lands in front of you instead. What happens next is no longer only his story, it is yours. So, your turn in the sorting chair. The hat drops over your eyes. Its voice is a whisper only you can hear. Where do you send everyone if you let yourself touch that almost? Harry in Slytherin learning to turn fear into strategy. Hermione in Ravenclaw, or even Slytherin claiming her books and her blood inheritance and refusing to apologize. Ginny in Gryffindor still, or perhaps in Hufflepuff, steady as bedrock while the war tilts. Neville in Slytherin growing dangerous and kind at the same time. You know these characters. You know everything about how they move through the castle in canon. Now, tilt one piece. Let McGonagall's quill slip. Let the hat insist. Let a single letter arrive a week earlier, or be opened by a different hand, or be carried to Gringotts instead of left on the kitchen table. Watch the lines redraw themselves. How do you handle Ron's first year in Slytherin? Does he share a dorm with Draco and Blaise, listening to their father's politics and quietly counting the Weasley hand-me-downs in his trunk? Does he walk into the common room after that first flying lesson and decide whether to laugh at Harry or defend him? He looks at her. She looks at him. Maybe her is Pansy, or Millicent, or a Slytherin Hermione, who has already read 3 books on magical law and is waiting for someone to argue with. If you were planning the DA in this timeline, which Slytherins do you recruit first? Do you trust Daphne, who listens more than she speaks? Theo, with his careful eyes? Draco, if Ron reaches out a hand before Harry throws down a challenge? A moment of understanding passes between them in your version, or it doesn't, and the whole war shifts on that absence. Add it to the AU. Tell us, in the comments, what you do with Year 1, the troll, the chessboard, the mirror. Tell us which house you would give to which character and why. Tell us which Slytherin you would invite into the DA and which one you would never trust. Every like, every comment, every shared link is another scene written, another corridor lit, another future for Ron to walk through. This channel is meant to be that shared bank of possibilities, a Gringotts vault of AUs, where your ideas sit beside ours, stacked in careful piles, glittering in the dark. If you want to keep walking, there are other doors waiting. Step sideways into What If Harry Was Sorted into Slytherin, where the hat does not yield and the boy who lived learns to survive among serpents. Or climb higher into What If Hermione claimed her ancient throne alone, where she takes the rings, signs the papers, and builds a new world before anyone can stop her. The hat is still on your head even now. The hall is still waiting. In the end, it is all in your head, and that is exactly where stories begin.